can assure you no one wants to do a better job than the current employees. We are concerned about too many reactionary changes being made. Our company and city will suffer from that. As most of us know, the worst decision made are those made during a crisis. We know not everything went right, but that doesn't mean that everything went wrong. Our NES team, along with the contractors and fellow utilities, brought back power to more than 230,000 homes. What we hope happens now is a conversation about how we can improve the system, make needed investments, and better prepare for the next storms that we know will follow. At NES, we have Republicans and Democrats, and I happen to be a conservative Republican. None of us want to see a partisan political fight with finger pointing and name calling, but that's what it's beginning to feel like. Everyone in this state should be focused on how to strengthen our infrastructure, keep our communities safe. We are ready to be a part of that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. All right, and our last, the last person for our public comment, Ms. White, you are recognized.
Good evening, Chair, members of the committee, and council members. Tamika White, SEIU Local 205. Thank you for allowing me to participate today. I want to thank the council members who stepped up and helped pull resources together and food. For the last 3 weeks, while employees at Metro Water, Stormwater, and System Service were working 16 to 18-hour days, with some on call day after day. As we all witnessed the damage that was caused by Storm Firm, it was something that most of us have never seen before. So thank you again to Councilwoman Ellis, Councilman Taylor, and Councilman Coopin. As I continue to wear many hats, including my community hat, I also want to thank Councilwoman Porterfield and Councilwoman Toombs for their support as we ensured that community members had hotel rooms and access to their medication and other critical needs. Thank you.
Right, and with that, we have concluded our public comment period, and we'll move on to, we have 5 introductory statements. We do have more departments present here today, so I just want to make clear to everybody here, not just those doing public statements are here. I know that there are additional departments that I can see out there, and I will not name you all, but I do appreciate you all for being here. I believe the mayor's office wanted to be recognized first, so if I can figure out how to get council mics. There we go. Got it. Okay. That admin table, you are now on, I think.
Thank you, chairs, members of council. Appreciate the opportunity to update you on Metro's storm response and our work to help the community recover. First of all, today, 2 local disaster assistance centers opened. They're at Hadley Park, Smith Springs Community Centers. These centers are totally organized and operated by our Metro partners, so we can help our residents immediately. We anticipate FEMA centers may be established in the future, but our residents need support today, and these local centers allow us and our partners to get help to residents now. In addition to visiting a disaster assistance center, residents can continue to report their recovery needs at NashvilleResponds.com or by calling the United Way of Greater Nashville at 211. Now I'd like to provide a brief timeline of our immediate storm response before handing the floor to the departments to get into operational details. Well before the weather hit, our EOC was preparing for the incoming storm, and our NDOT crews pre-treated our roadways. On Saturday, January 24th, our NDOT fleet was out in full force clearing roadways of snow. But as we all experienced overnight Saturday into Sunday, the snow changed to ice, and most of us woke up to trees cracking and falling, or in some cases exploding. The mayor immediately declared a local state of emergency, and this allowed us to take additional steps to support the safety and well-being of Nashvillians, request state assistance, and as needed, invoke emergency-related mutual aid assistance from surrounding communities. The mayor also communicated this to Governor Bill Lee and members of our federal leadership. By Sunday afternoon, half of our residents were without power. With temperatures predicted to drop to dangerous levels, we immediately opened more than 50 locations where people could go get warm and receive power. Fire stations, police precincts, both across the county, as well as 3 warming centers. That helped ensure that there was a warm, safe place nearby. At 4 p.m., we hosted our first daily briefing virtually from the EOC and updated the community on the storm impact and response and announced the opening of the warming locations. We also moved our overflow shelter to a 24/7 operation for those experiencing homelessness. And when WeGo could not safely continue their operations, we mobilized mobility solutions to drive unhoused residents to shelters. Recognizing that outages cut off access to TV and social media for many, we sent emergency texts that night to inform residents about the warming centers. Then on Monday, we activated contract support for NDOT to assist in removing trees, blocking power crews and roadways. Those teams worked in tandem with NES crews. At 11 a.m., we held a second daily briefing and implored residents to come to a warming center rather than riding it out. That afternoon, we launched a dedicated transportation line to help residents reach warming centers and publicized it by text. We mobilized MNPD, fire, and WeGo employees to assist with transporting residents in need and opened an additional overflow shelter at the Salvation Army for people experiencing homelessness. And NDOT continued to clear roadways of snow and ice. On Tuesday, primary and secondary routes were improving, and NDOT was making good progress on clearing downed trees. As operations at the 50-plus warming sites, 2 overflow shelters, and the transportation line continued, the World Central Kitchen mobilized to the Monroe Street Kroger and then Richland Park to provide free lunch for impacted residents. Given the length of the storm, concerns were increasing about potential water main breaks, so we issued reminders for people to continue to drip their faucets, especially if they were without power. By Wednesday, our warming centers were serving hundreds, including warm meals. Our EOC was working to ensure healthcare providers had everything they need to serve vulnerable residents. We were continuing to conduct cold patrols and the transportation line, and WeGo was back to full operations. On Thursday, we partnered with the United Way of Greater Nashville to launch NashvilleResponse.com and the Winter Weather Recovery Fund to address the growing storm-related costs residents were facing. Our first donor, Tractor Supply, provided $250,000 to seed the fund, and we began encouraging people to submit their unmet needs to NashvilleResponse.com or by calling 211. Throughout the week that followed, we added consumer protection support, warning about potential scams and helping residents verify contractors. We expanded housing support through Airbnb and the CVC's hotel network, and we partnered with the Nashville Predators to open the arena for warming, food, and device charging. We also announced the Winter Storm Response Commission, which will look not only at NES's preparation response, but also the actions of Metro and related agencies. We must learn from this event to strengthen our future emergency protocols. We expect to announce the commission members and date for their first meeting this week. Throughout this crisis, we've made a concerted effort to lift up the heroic 24-hour efforts of the workers at NES, OEM, NDOT, Nashville Fire, MNPD, 911, 311, the Red Cross, Metro Social Services, and many other departments and partners, all of whom are navigating this emergency themselves. And finally, we've seen neighbors helping neighbors. This weekend, Hands on Nashville mobilized to support the community in full force. If you are one of the lucky ones who are able, please visit HON.org to help those still recovering. Thank you all for your leadership during this historic event. I know you were fielding calls from constituents in desperate situations, often while facing those same difficulties in your own homes. I'll step aside for OEM. Just please know that we remain your partners through recovery and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you. The next department that we're going to recognize is Metro Water Services. Director Potter.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Scott Potter. I'm the Director of Metro Water Services. First and foremost, I want to recognize the extraordinary and incredible efforts of all the Metro Water Services employees over the past several weeks. This storm placed extraordinary demands on our organization and our infrastructure. Our teams responded with a strong sense of responsibility to the community, working under difficult and rapidly changing conditions. Their commitment resulted in maintaining essential operations, keeping our water and our wastewater treatment systems and their associated pump stations fully functioning. I want to pause there and do a serious shout out to our wastewater partners at Metro Water Services. We focus a lot on drinking water and its provision, but I want to remind everybody, without drinking water, you can't flush the toilet. And without drinking water and you can't flush the toilet, you have a public health crisis. So the people who work in wastewater collection and treatment at Metro Water Services need to be lauded as well. All this was not an easy task. At some point in the recovery, we had 50 emergency generators providing power at various locations, requiring vigilant refueling and maintenance. We repaired 178 main breaks, answered 38,522 customer calls, and completed 1,523 work orders. We set a record demand on January 29th, 145.2 million gallons of flow. That's 45% higher than normal. And through it all, we provided exceptional water quality to our customers. We certainly did not do this by ourselves. I want to thank our partners in the metropolitan government. First, the police department for flying their helicopter, helping us find water main breaks. Our friends at General Services made sure we had fuel, and we all know what NDOT did for the entire city. Additionally, I'm very fortunate to have John and Mary working with the council members to keep them informed, and a communications team that kept the city informed. While I'm pleased with our overall performance, there's some areas that require improvement. We're going to have a very thorough lessons learned process, but these three things have leaped out to us as requiring immediate attention. Number one, we've got to harden further our emergency power systems at our pump stations. Number two, our communications of our pump stations require hardening. We maintain a telemetry system at 200 sites around the county. And the telemetry sites operated off standard lithium batteries that had a life of 12 to 24 hours. Also, every antenna in our telemetry system iced over. So for the first 48 hours or so, we were operating blind. We couldn't see what was going on in the pump stations and at the reservoirs, so we required people to physically visit all 113 sewer pump stations and all 55 water pump stations periodically to get a picture of what was going on. Finally, we have 68,073 valves in our water system and over 3,000 valves in our sewer system. In some areas of our system, our water valves operate backwards. Some of the older utility districts that we inherited over time installed valves that closed. Normally it's righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. Some of our valves operate backwards. And we had people in the field on occasion that thought a valve was in one position, when it was in the other position. So we're going to visit over the next 2 years every single valve in our system, and we're going to verify it's right hand open, left hand open. We're going to GPS locate it. We're going to exercise it and make sure it works, because when we finally figured out a couple of valves, especially in our northern part of the county, that were in the wrong position, when we corrected that, it solved a lot of problems in a hurry. So that concludes my remarks. I want to remind everybody and stress the fact that the employees of Metro Water Services really delivered, and I'm really proud to be their leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Potter. I cannot even explain how much it would confuse me personally if I ran across something that was righty-loosey, lefty-tighty. We're going in order here. The next up is NES. I see the CEO. CEO, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chair Huffman, Chair Evans Siegel, and members of the council for convening this special meeting. Also thank members of the community who took the time to join us this evening to share their experiences and feedback. We take your comments seriously, and those who couldn't make it to this forum, I encourage you to share your feedback by either calling our customer service line or providing your feedback on using an online form we have on our website that's set up for specifically storm feedback. We have some important information to cover today regarding the impacts of Winter Storm Fern, how we can best support our customers through recovery, and how we can improve our performance overall. Members of our staff are here to field questions you may have, including Executive Vice President Brent Baker, who will provide some brief remarks that provide a technical picture in a few moments. Before we move forward, I'd like to thank the Mayor's Office and Metro agencies for their support, feedback, and an all-hands-on-deck approach. We received great support. I owe great gratitude to our employees, every single one of them. They've worked tirelessly since the beginning of this storm, and it wreaked havoc on our community. And they put in very long hours to get us to the place where we can finally talk about recovery. And as one of the employees mentioned earlier, a lot of our employees didn't have power, but they rallied and came to work to help restore our customers because we have such a sense of mission. The partnership and collaboration with SEIU has also been invaluable in both supporting our workforce and reaching effective restoration. Winter Storm Fern presented an exceptionally challenging dynamic. At peak, more than 230,000 of our customers were without power. This covered roughly 294 square miles of our 685 square mile territory. The severity of this ice storm, as well as the sustained cold temperatures, made this storm an anomaly that challenged both our standard storm response procedures and long-held industry standards. Speaking more broadly, we've never experienced a storm of this magnitude. Most of the damage was done to our distribution system. I will know more about the specifics of how many spans of line we had down and the specific damage once we have a full post-storm review completed. However, with half of our customers being out of power and most of the damage being to our distribution system, we can predict that the storm tore down about half of our distribution lines. And our employees, along with the assistance of contractors, with a total of 1,900 linemen, had to rebuild it. And that certainly was not a small feat. I'd like to call out 3 specific areas which have generated the vast majority of questions from council members and the community. These areas include assessment, communication, and coordination. After a major weather incident, or in the case of Winter Storm Fern, while an incident is ongoing, assessment is the work our crews do to get in the field and initially determine how much damage has occurred. This involves using technology like drones, but the primary tool is personnel going out and physically seeing those areas to determine how many broken poles do we have, how many spans of line do we have down, and how many customers are affected. The first assessment gives you preliminary data on the magnitude of the damage, and we do a secondary one that also begins during the response period to give us a clearer idea of things that may have been missed through the first one. These assessments provide situational information that supports our restoration efforts. With Winter Storm Fern and the sustained difficult conditions, assessment proved to be a significant challenge. While assessment certainly affects the quality and cadence of information we can provide to our customers and those serving our customers, such as you, we understand the frustration with communications tools. I'll address that later in my report, but I do want to create a clear link between how assessments affect all aspects of response, especially communication. Under coordination, despite challenges with assessment and communication, we are all grateful to our Metro and state partners who prioritize coordinating with us and helping us meet our needs as we restored our customers. In particular, OEM assisted an incredible amount in coordinating with all agencies to ensure that we had what we needed. We are grateful for that. Additionally, I'd like to call out the significant work that was done by NDOT to clear roads so our crews could reach where they needed to restore power. That was no small feat. I think we all saw the roads covered in trees, so we are appreciative to them. I also appreciate the swift coordination of Metro codes in supporting mutual work, specifically in the area of customers that had weatherhead damage. These are just a few examples of the incredible coordination and collaboration we saw with Metro agencies. While full restoration occurred on Friday, February 6th, the the effects will linger on from the storm for quite some time. We recognize the hardship that Winter Storm Fern placed on our customers, as well as areas where we failed to help customers make informed decisions about the timeline for restoration. While customers only pay for the power they consume, we understand that many are reassessing their finances and incurred additional costs while they were working through this storm. We are taking 3 critical steps to offset financial hardships that our customers experience due to being displaced from home. First, we are suspending all disconnects and late fees through June. Second, NES will provide unlimited payment arrangements for all customers through December of 2026. And then NES has made payment, NES will make payment arrangements for through the end of the calendar year, even though we normally just make those at certain intervals. So we don't normally offer that broad range of opportunities. And we appreciate that some of our customers have experienced significant financial impacts of being out of their homes. And so as a board, our board decided to donate $1 million to the Mayor's Relief Fund to support Nashville's needs. We're hoping that will be very helpful to our customers and your constituents as they recover alongside of us from the storm. The storm has been costly, and we are working through our cost assessments to ensure we receive maximum resources for recovery. Our preliminary estimates show damage will likely land between $110 million and $140 million. We've mentioned on several occasions that this is the largest storm in NES history. This is further demonstrated by the fact that it's our most costly restoration in our history. And before that, the most costly restoration was the tornadoes in 2020. That restoration effort cost $26 million, as opposed to the $110 million to $140 million range that we're currently facing with this storm, just to give you some sense of magnitude. While we're in a strong financial position, this generational storm will require us to consider a range of options to bridge financing and accelerate our bond issuance to avoid rate impacts on our customers. We will share more information on this and expect to have a robust financial update that we can share at upcoming meetings. But in the meantime, we will be back at this legislative body to pursue standard reimbursement resolution with the council to unlock necessary funds as soon as possible. While we are moving towards the recovery process, I'm clear that we did not meet the expectations of our customers, particularly with how we communicated critical information. We are an organization made up of more than 900 employees who must show up every day and execute, myself included, to ensure that we are doing the best for our customers. We are committed to learning from this storm, and yesterday I asked the board to help us execute on an independent after-action review that can be completed quickly. I believe this action, completed with an aggressive timeline, is important while the last 2 weeks are fresh on our minds, and to help us be prepared for the spring storm season. In the meantime, I'll share with you 4 actions that we intend to take immediately. We have 4 pillar areas which we are immediately addressing to improve performance during a major weather event. First, we will enhance emergency management leadership. NES will evaluate enhancements to its emergency management structure, including formalizing leadership structure, leadership responsibilities, and adding additional staffing to support more streamlined coordination, clearer accountability, and improved decision-making during emergency events, including major storms. Second, we will address communications, outage information, and outage map improvements. We will conduct a comprehensive review of the storm-related communications and outage map and other tools that were provided. This effort will focus on clarity, timing, consistency, system capacity, data flow, and customer understanding to ensure reliable, timely, and understandable information is available to our customers. We believe this pillar is essentially critical to improve our performance as it relates to our work with members of this governing body and our mutual constituents and customers. Third, we will revisit estimated restoration time practices. We will review and refine estimated time of restoration practices, including how estimated restoration times are developed, updated, and communicated as field conditions and damage assessments evolve. The goal is to improve transparency, consistency, and make sure that customers truly know when they can expect their power to be restored. Fourth, we will assess resiliency, undergrounding, and vegetation management. We will initiate comprehensive evaluations on system resiliency, grid hardening, and vegetation management to reduce outage risk and improve system performance overall. We are planning to complete a system-wide undergrounding study to evaluate the feasibility, cost, benefits, and trade-offs of undergrounding the electric system with the goal of increasing a higher percentage of our system. I look forward to working with each of you on these pillars as we move forward as an organization. In the meantime, our team plans to re-engage every member of the council in early March to discuss what to do during outage situations and an overview of the NES system ahead of spring inclement weather. I think that will also be a good time for us to discuss progress on these goals that we've set for ourselves. A date is forthcoming for this, but it is a critical priority for us to be working with you to ensure that we are providing you the information that you need to serve your constituents. I appreciate your partnership through this process and invite questions and concerns. That concludes my report. If you will indulge, Brent Baker, our Chief Operating Officer, could provide some more technical information.
Well, I would like to do that. We did give departments just a few minutes for introductory comments, so we need to move on to the next, which will be OEM, and if people want to ask those technical questions, they can, but I would ask that he share that technical information with us as well via email if it is not able to be shared during the course of our questions today.
Thank you. Yes, I suspect a lot of it will come out in the questions.
Okay, thank you. Next is OEM.
Good evening. I'm Director Chief Will Swan of the Nashville Fire Department in the Office of Emergency Management. It is an honor to be in the position and the role that we are as first responders, and a lot of thanks I need to give out to many departments, especially the Fire Department and the Office of Emergency Management. And as you're going to see here in a few minutes, I'm going to mention many other partnerships. We would not have been able to do what we've done in these last few days. Quickly, the Office of Emergency Management, our job is anytime the city encounters something that overtaxes one department, it could be man-made, it could be a natural disaster or planned event. Our job is to make sure that we have all the pillars and everyone together to be able to mitigate that situation. We operate off of life safety, incident stabilization, and property conservation. Our keys to success in any type of event that we deal with, we will analyze the situation, we'll make a plan, we will implement that plan and constantly reevaluate the plan because it is a live footprint and it's constantly changing. So the emergency management cycle is preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation. In the Office of Emergency Management, how it works. When we have an incident, we pull in all the departments that we feel that is necessary to help take care of whatever situation we're dealing with. It is designed for the director of that department or their representative, which we call the emergency service coordinators. They have the authority to make decisions in a swift manner at the direction of their director. So if you are an emergency service coordinator, you represent your department. It makes things work quick and swift when we're in operational mode. Dave Rosenberg did an excellent job of going through a timeline, so I do not want to bore everybody with that, but I think it's critical that you hear what Metro departments and others done. As we know, Thursday, January the 22nd, Tennessee state of emergency was declared. At this time, from an OEM standpoint, we started messaging to all the departments about weather awareness. By Friday, we started working with code patrols in our Office of Homelessness. Saturday, snow had already started. NDOT had well started their salting and plowing. We became virtually activated at that time. By Sunday, major ice, and we had significant power outages. At this point, we start looking at life safety. We had already had pre-plans with shelters where they would go and the significance of the supply and demand. We talked to Laura Warmack at the fairgrounds and Monique Odoms as far as our community centers. So by 1 o'clock, we already had fairground shelters open with 2 more in process being put in place. That's the Southeast Community Center and the Madison Community Center. We also had a backup plan for overflow. We used the Nashville Fire Training Academy. We also, talking to our police partners, Chief Drake and his team, we didn't want to ask the public to do something that we weren't willing to do. So we opened our doors. Fire halls were open, police station precincts were open as warming locations where people could come in and get out of the code. By Monday, we already established a hotline for people to call if they needed a ride from their home to the shelter. This was done with our partners, DEC and the fire department, and then for transportation, which was an amazing feat to watch. By the evening of Monday, the hotline was established. Our partners, OEM, fire department, police, PD, WeGo, schools, the sheriff department, we had established a transportation system where residents, again, could come from their house to a shelter, and then in the morning, they could go back home or to work. By Tuesday, we activated the VOAD activation, which is a volunteer organization that's active in disaster. By Wednesday, we had activated United Way and Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee, so individuals could give donations to help people that was affected by the storm. Thursday, from the time that this event started, day 4, which was Sunday, we were very in touch with our TEMA partners. I want to give them a shout out because when it comes to TEMA, this is our resource. If it was something that was too big for Metro to handle, we didn't have those resources, we would rely on our state partners. And Director Sheehan and I talked just about every day. A great and strong partnership. Also, we stayed closely connected with NES to make sure that power restoration to our critical infrastructure was prioritized. By day Thursday, as stated, our final nursing home power was restored. We also had a donation of generators given to us by Tractor Supplies. We received that Thursday night. By Friday, we had water distribution in Jolton. You heard Scott Potter do an excellent depiction of what happened in the city, and great work and collaboration there. By Saturday, we had already had a plan to distribute the generators using our VOAD. We did not want to just give out the generators without putting a warning and also a CO detector and a one-sheet page that talked about the danger of carbon monoxide. By Sunday, we had bottled water distributed in Union Hill. Hands on Nashville moved to full activation. By day 13, we started to have a little relief on our shelters. So by the numbers, we were able to reduce that footprint. We started with the fairgrounds. We were able to close that Thursday, the 13th day. Hands on Nashville on Wednesday, they started a canvassing event. Thursday, we was able to close the Southeast Community Center. And Friday, we closed the Madison Community Center. And by Monday, we were able to close the Bellevue Community Center. The reason or how we communicated as far as our department, we used daily pressers. We had daily news release. We used social media presence. We used the iPod message. That's when we started messaging for the hotline for people who needed rides to and fro the shelter. And we had situational reports. And I know For the Metro Council standpoint, you got those twice a day. And then as of late, we are just doing it once a day. So we get those in the morning and afternoons, and I've got a lot of feedback from you guys, and I appreciate that. So by the number, the EOC has been activated 18 days. We will remain active because we realize that now that we do have our DCRs, our disaster recovery centers active, we will stay open and activated. And then when our FEMA partners get here, they will house themselves in our EOC. They'll have a brick and mortar to work from, and also they'll have people canvassing the communities. The persons served in the shelters, 4,702 total overnight stay. Persons transported, 1,124 transports with 1,507 persons transported. Food distribution, Second Harvest, big shout out. Couldn't have done this without them. More than 260,000 meals was delivered and served. Mercy Chef did 4,000, a little over 4,000 meals. And let me be clear, we had many individuals that had food trucks that came to the shelters and participated. Much thanks to you. Water that we distributed, over 8,000 cases of bottled water. Our current VOAD cases, 1,588 total cases with 780 referrals made. Our financial donations as of 2/9, a little bit over 1.2 million has been donated, with a little over 385 distributed to our nonprofit partners. So my key successes here is our coordination and collaboration with all the departments. OEM, fire, police, NDOT, water, general service, who's done an outstanding, marvelous job. Parks, public health, DCSO, fairgrounds, the mayor and the mayor's office. We appreciate, again, allowing us to do what we're sworn to do and with confidence. Our external partners, NES, Red Cross, TEMA, the healthcare, VOAD, and our nonprofits. There are so many moments here that don't have the time to talk about, but to all of the efforts that was being made, a big appreciation. So the challenges. This event posed significant challenges, affecting not just Davidson County, but regions across Tennessee and beyond. The extreme cold, power outages, and water freezing created a complex set of circumstances that required rapid coordination across multiple agencies. But despite these challenges, our office worked with all of the organizations that I mentioned earlier, collaborating efforts, working together. It demonstrated resilience and strength in overcoming adversity. Now, these experiences will ultimately make us stronger in future responses. And there are areas that we all will work on to improve. We will do after actions, and we will make sure that any areas that we need to improve upon, we'll make sure it's done. So again, I thank you for your time. And again, I want to thank all of the departments for all the work that they have done. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Swan. The last department will be NDOT, and NDOT is very regularly before my committee, so I would just remind them that they know I don't like to cut people off, but we did ask folks to keep these remarks really brief, and I hope that they will consider doing so.
I will consider that. Mr. Rosenberg, Chief Swan, Director Potter, they've all pretty much covered the details. I'm going to hit some highlights that we put together. But good evening, council members. My name is Philip Jones. I'm the Deputy Director of NDOT. I lead our operations division, and my team has played an essential role in the city's response to the winter storm as a member of the Emergency Operations Center team. Before I run through some operational highlights, which I will skip, and talk about next steps, I'd like to take a moment to publicly thank our workers for their unending dedication to public service for the Nashville during this response. I do not take for granted that we have had some of the best people in the metropolitan government working for this department. Emergency response is not just a series of protocols and policies. It relies on having people dedicated to working relentlessly toward managing a crisis, and plow drivers, debris crews, signal crews, sign and maintenance crews, sidewalk cleaning crews, and more all showed up day after day and got the work done. I'm sincerely grateful to all of them, and I hope you are too. I'm going to kind of skip through a lot of things that got covered, and I'll conclude with, I want to close by being sure to thank our great partners, the Mayor's Office, Office of Emergency Management, Nashville Fire Department, Metro Nashville Police Department, Metro Water Services, the Nashville Electric Service, Tennessee Department of Transportation, the Tennessee National Guard, and of course the Metro Council for your support. I'd also like to be sure that, I'm sure there's some people that's been left out, but I want to ensure you on one thing that makes this so successful. Under Chief Swan's leadership, to be able to pull these departments together and have the coordination that we have is what's kind of built the successes we've had in this event. That's where it's come from. So I'd just like to be sure and share that with you. We've identified some things that we would like to do better. I've been here 32 years. This is probably one of the best responses we've had when it comes to, we started several days before this event started on Saturday. So with the pre-treatment we put out there, some people are skeptical. This should prove to everyone it works. The new equipment that you've allowed us to purchase made a difference. We were able to get a lot more done than we have in years past instead of struggling through those scenarios. I can't say enough about General Services stepping up and being there for us from the start of the event till now. We will continue this brush. We have a plan. You can look at your maps. When you look online, look at your brush maps. That's how it's broke up. We're hitting the most affected areas right now. We will continue to work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day during the holidays and weekends to get this stuff cleaned up. It will take a little time. I'm going to share with you, we're going to get this first pass done. We were dedicated to the first 2 or 3 weeks to getting the first pass done. We will continue on that task. I can't thank the department enough. I want to give a little shout out to Chris Mitchell. While being newer to our department's done a great job communicating with me, hopefully communicating with you of any and everything we've had going on. But thank you very much.
Sir, I appreciate you taking my request into consideration. I am curious, 32 years, does that mean you started right before or right after the last ice storm?
Sorry, I was here for the last ice storm. That was the start of my career.
Well, full circle. Thank you. All right, we have a queue that has been started. We are teamwork makes the dream work. So keep your hands up. All right. Tom, Jacob, you can put your hands down. Sandra, Sean, Emily, you can put your hands down. Courtney, Terry, y'all can put your hands down. Joy, Sandy, you can put your hands down. Did you see? Yep. Y'all can put your hands down. And then your Donaldson Hermitage contingent. Did you get Sherry? Tasha? Yep. All right. We have it started. Oh, sorry.
Oh, my goodness.
He can't even see y'all, all these screens. Sorry. Councilmembers Gamble and Toombs. Councilmember Eslick, Councilmember Webb. Councilmember Hill? Yeah. All right. If you want to get back in the queue, just make eye contact with this gentleman here. The order, yes. Would you?
I'm going to do it auctioneer style. No, I'm kidding. All right. So, Councilmember Sepulveda is first. Then we have Councilmember Parker, followed by Councilmember Benedict, Councilmember Vice Chair Prep T, Councilmember Cash. Let's see. Councilmember Coupin is next. Councilmember, let's see, Johnston is after that. Councilmember Vo, followed by Councilmember Ewing. And then we're going to move over here, Councilmember Suara, Councilmember Porterfield, going in rough order, Councilmember Evans, Councilmember Bradford, Councilmember Ellis is after that. Let's see, Councilmember, oh my God, blanking on your name, sorry, Councilmember Weiner. Let's see, we've got, I think I saw Councilmember Benton's hand, Councilmember Toombs, Councilmember Gamble, Councilmember Hill, and Councilmember Eastlick, and I believe, yep, okay, got Councilmember Webb.
We really could have used the computer system for this one. We're going to run through questions just as we typically do in committee, which is council member Sepulveda will go and she will ask her questions. And when she is completed, we will move on to the next person. Councilmember Sepulveda, you are recognized. Oh, yes, Councilmember Gamble, there you are. Yes, ma'am. We do not typically limit, in my committee, I don't believe Councilmember Hoffman does. I would ask everybody to be considerate of the fact that every single one of you just about is in the queue. And so if you could keep your questions brief so we can move through, we will go back through if your questions are not answered. But I want to make sure we're already an hour in. So please, Councilmember Suara.
Typically in committees, we do committee members first before the council members. Are we not doing that this time? Just checking.
No, I announced at the beginning, given that we have a combined meeting here and that it would be very difficult to distinguish that. We're going to give everybody the opportunity to ask questions in the order that they were written down. All right, Councilmember Sepulveda.
Thank you, chairs. I didn't know how I got so lucky. All right. I will be as brief as I possibly can. I do want to thank everybody who is attending today, all of the workers. So I'll just dive right into it. My questions aren't a reflection of the workers. I know the workers had a lot on their plate dealing with not just the storm, but some of them had outages themselves. I heard a lot of patting on the back during this meeting, and the reality is that our leadership failed throughout the storm, and it has been failing throughout many storms. I don't understand how we continue to be in this position given the amount of storms that we have had in this city since I began the council term. You know, it's been back-to-back disasters in this city. It's like we are built on native land or something. What I'm going to ask, well, my first question had to do with translation services, but the reality is I went on our websites from multiple departments, and the reality is that multiple departments that gave testimony tonight, and many that didn't translate the material in full or would only translate certain material, and that's unacceptable, and it shouldn't only be happening when we have a natural disaster. It should be happening all of the time, because there is no possible way that all of your customers are able to receive all of the information without translation services, and that's not just Spanish. We have multiple communities in this city. A lot of that falls not only on me or some of my colleagues, that also falls on organizations. A lot of us have taken that upon ourselves. So I'm gonna leave that with you all because I don't have time to ask y'all one by one if you all have translators and interpreters in your departments, because I know the reality is a lot of you don't, and a lot of you rely on our service line. So that is something that needs to be looked at moving forward. For NES, what is our plan for staffing up?
All right, NES, you are recognized.
Thank you, Council Lady. With regard to staffing, we are in a constant state of evaluating what positions we need where. And I commit to you, we will take a look at our current staffing to address normal operational needs, construction and storms. Certainly when you have a generational storm, you have to staff up to a level that you would not normally have. So we had a total of 1,900 line workers on our system for this storm. We have about 240 people in our transmission distribution department that work towards restoring power for people. Generally, that's appropriate staffing for construction projects and things of that nature that we have, but we will certainly look at if there's a need to add additional people.
Thank you. Follow up. 2 questions. What would the timeline for that be? And would that include contract expansion for bringing in subcontractors?
Okay, I'll break those apart. Timeline, as I mentioned, we're kind of constantly evaluating as we have positions leave, people retire, we say, okay, well, that's an administrative job. Maybe we should fill that with a lineman role. That's ongoing. And we certainly can do, and staffing levels have not been brought to our attention as an issue until the last few days. So we plan to evaluate that. Can't give you quite a time frame on that one. But with regard to contractors, we have a couple of contract companies with whom we work for transmission distribution work. We are going to make sure that we have additional contracts lined up. So if there's a large storm, it's easier to get an enormous amount of resources. I don't believe we've ever had more than 500 or 600 line workers on our system at any point in time during even our largest storm in the past. So ramping up to 1,900 was quite a feat. But we do already have contracts in place via what we call mutual aid, which is where our peer utilities come and help us. We had a whole lot of that on our system for this storm, and they can be relatively quick to integrate as long as they don't have a storm of their own to manage.
Thank you. I have one more question for...
Sorry, would you mind addressing the chair? I was told I needed to ask you that.
Thank you, Chair. I have one more question for NES and then 2 questions for water, and that's it. For NES, when there is a single unit in an apartment complex that is out, how is NES able to tell that it's just 1 unit or 2 units? Because we had several of those situations come up.
Okay, I will give you a response. And if it's not robust enough for you, I can have our chief operating officer come up here. We can tell from our system control whether a meter is energized or not. And during a storm of this magnitude, we had a staff overnight that would sit and try to communicate with meters that looked like they were out. And then we sent crews out to see, do they have damage indicating they can't receive power? So we should know that as long as they have separate meters for each apartment. There are apartment complexes in town that will just have 1 meter for the whole building. Those aren't as common anymore, but typically they'll have their own meters, and we can see that with our smart meters.
Does that answer your question?
It does, Chair. We just have a lot of slumlords, is what I have experienced through my time on council, and so I'm wanting to know the number of apartment complexes that have that situation and how we could rectify that. I think is something that we'll have to explore in the future. Then my next 2 questions are for Metro Water.
Yes, and since you did that, I would just thank you for saying what department they're for. As we call on y'all tonight, if you have a specific department you think the question is for, if you would please say that so they can start making their way up, that'll help smooth this over some.
And then my last two questions, will Metro Water be asking for more funds in this budget cycle to buy out homes since the FEMA funds have been spent in regards to that program? And then two, how many water main breaks happened during the storm?
So we are in discussions with the mayor's office about how we're going to fund the home buyout program going forward. That will involve a discussion about the stormwater fee. So that we hoped and intended to have that discussion during the budget process. So we intend to have that discussion. I think I said 168, is that right, Tanya? Well, round up to 170. It's about 170.
Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Parker, you are next in the queue and recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple for NES, and then one for water and one for OEM. I'm going to try to be judicious with my time and everyone's time. So for NES, we heard comments, and I also heard from folks through the course of the storm. We heard comments tonight about this as well, about the critical referral program. So I had a question. Do we have, is it standard procedure for us to do any kind of outreach to that list of customers? So presumably we have contact information for all those people. So, the institutions, the nursing homes, the medical facilities, but also these residential customers where we know there's a dependent that requires electricity for their health. Are we, are we calling that phone number? Are we letting those people know that, yes, are they getting maybe a little more information than the general public? I know it's difficult. Everybody wanted a timeline, but these are folks that have a dependent or themselves who require this so do we have that capacity? Are we doing that now? Can we build that capacity if we're not doing that now?
Yeah, so we are building that capacity now. As these questions have come up, we're going to increase that. What we have in that critical referral program are those customers that have medical needs that are already on the list. As we go through a restoration like this, we are working with OEM to get the information of which one of those customers are still remaining so we can find whether it's a generator or just a wellness check. So that was the effort we've used at this time. I think the point of more communication and more identification is something that we have taken on through this storm and are working to make that an improvement. Yep. And then you also mentioned, we'll talk critical referral, which are those customers, those individual customers. We also have the critical facilities, and I'm going to read through some of those so we all know. Do I need to do something different with the mic?
I just, if you did good on that one, pulling it up to you.
Just a little closer to the mouth, please.
Okay. So then the other critical parts of our system are critical water and sewer facilities. Those have to come on immediately and as fast as possible. Airports, switching yards, critical communications, prisons, hospitals, critical data centers, fire, police, and national security. Those are our tier one. Get those on immediately. Right next after that are the radio transmission towers, telecommunication hubs, data centers, natural gas facilities, and nursing homes. And I know one thing we've learned through this, there were several nursing homes that weren't in our list. And I think some of that is the fact that there are private nursing homes that come about through time. And I think we will work harder with our key accounts folks to make sure we identify those in the onboarding process. And that was a highlight through the storm that we can improve upon.
Thank you. And just a super brief follow-up on that, the connecting with VOAD, I assume there's a pile of generators somewhere that's going to be warehoused somewhere in Nashville that we'll have quicker access to. I don't know how many are left. I don't know if there's any left, but if we could kind of have those at the ready for those residential customers who could utilize those to get through an outage. So I had a question about the meters. This came up just a moment ago, but I had a very specific question. We had a lot of customers that we heard from who got notice that their power was back on, some multiple times. Some people left their accommodation. Some people drove quite a ways to come home and find that it was not actually on. So, when we talk about trying to communicate with those meters, do we know, is that communication with the meters, is that LTE cellular? Is it pulsing some data into the grid itself? Is it possible for a meter to tell us it's on when it's not actually on? I guess what I'm saying is, can we use whether a meter is getting, both legs of power to make sure that before a customer gets a notice that their power is on, that meter is actually on, not like mine was with one leg, but with both legs of power, 240 volts coming in so that people aren't coming home to these false notices.
Yeah, and I am an engineer by trade, so I'm going to try to do this with all the detail that is helpful, and get through this in a way that really is meaningful to everyone. When a meter is pinged, that is something that allows us to know exactly what's going on that meter in normal blue sky conditions. When the system starts to fail at the level it did, the communication path is sometimes broken. So that meter does know that it's not receiving power, but the ability to communicate back to the head end is sometimes lost, which happened in this situation. As we restored power, we did begin to see those communications back to the meters. We were able to ping, and that is where we were able to see which customers were still out or on, and that was something that we used the meters for in that situation. The issue where we had where customers were receiving texts about power coming on was a different system that we have for people to go on the map and register for an outage that they see in their area to be able to get information about that. That one is tied to a circuit. There's a question that some have asked in this storm is, do we have the ability to sectionalize our system to restore faster? We do. When we sectionalize, that does leave off some of those customers, and our crews in the field don't have the ability to communicate back that the ones that they segmented off, they're getting power restored. We are working to improve that system as well. So we will be making quick investments in making sure that is not the case going forward. That will require some unique programming, some differences to where our field personnel can continue as fast as they need to. That is the critical function of their role out in the field. We are working to make sure that it's not slowing them down to do that restoration, but cleaning that up. So there's two different technologies there. The last piece of having what we would call bright dim, or having a broken neutral, which is where you would see your lights, maybe one half of the house be on or off. That is something that is, right now, we are working on an enhancement to our system, but it is a little more difficult to see because for us, the meter looks to be on. We have enough energy for it to be fully powered. There is a way that we can program and add another feature that we can start to look at that. With that, when we know that is on, we do require at this point for a customer to let us know they're having that bright dim situation. That is one part of the challenge of getting this out. Teresa mentioned in the evening times, overnight, we were going through all of the meters that we could ping per zip code to find the zip code that was going to be done that day, to ping that, and then we sent our assessors out in the morning to visit all of those locations to see if we could find those different issues. We also used a different texting tool to make sure we communicated with customers or called them. So each day there was roughly about 70 customers that we were getting information that their meters needed to be visited. We would text those customers. Where text didn't work, we called roughly 8 customers per day. Those were the efforts were being made every day to make sure we got ahead of the weatherhead issues and the meter issues or visiting with an electrician. So those are some steps. We've learned a lot in this storm, and we really appreciate all of the interest from you all, and your interest has pushed us and propelled us to do even better. We are going to continue to improve this. This is something that everyone is committed to, and that very feature right there is one that we would look to improve quickly.
Thank you. So one more for NES, and this might be a difficult or impossible question to answer. And, in crisis situations, we make choices, we make decisions, we make calls. Sometimes they're ideal. Hindsight is 20/20. I don't want to be Tuesday evening quarterbacking the really difficult work that the organization's been doing. But, let's say that we had all the information that we have now about the outage and everything. If we had the Biff's Sports Almanac from Back to the Future 2, and we could make every decision right, how, just to help folks understand the scale of this disaster, if every single thing had broken our way and everything had gone right, how much faster could we have restored power?
So that is something we'll be analyzing to get a better feel for that. I do want to give you some perspective on how we prepared for this. I think that's a little bit of the question. On Tuesday, January 20th, we started to prepare for this storm, and much like we have prepared for other storms. So one on record we had was roughly 200,000 customers that required 500 line workers to be here. So we have the connections with both mutual aid partners and the contractors who normally work on our system. Those contractors who work on our system, 2 different contracts, are able to scale up to 800 line workers. So we began on Tuesday letting them know that we see weather coming. We would like to have them on the ready. Many contractors serve the region, and so they were asked to stay on their property. We got a few more on ours. As we ramped up through that storm coming in, when that came in, then we began ramping at an accelerated level. The challenge of acceleration also, as we talked about early on, was assessing the information to know just how many we needed. As we went through the storm and had more people here, we did receive communications, complaints about people in church parking lots not being deployed quick enough. We know that if we would have brought 1,900 on day one, the deployment would have been challenging. There would have been a lot of inability to deploy. So us getting that learning through this storm and figuring out how many we could actually handle in the beginning will be something we'll begin to forecast a bit more about how much quicker a storm like this could be in the future.
Thank you.
And I'd like to add that one of the key pieces that was kind of the long pole in the tent was getting the damage assessment completed. And with the scale of the damage that was across the system, we had to get out and see how many poles are broken, how many spans of line are down, and how much vegetation really needs to be removed. And that was all done by people on the ground. We sent out engineering teams to look at that. We had assistance from TVA and others with those assessments. But we're looking at other options for doing assessments so that we could, if we were to have a storm of this magnitude again, how can we get that assessment done faster, which will tell us how many people do we need and how long are our customers going to be out by area. So we're looking to some of our peers that are in hurricane prone areas to provide us with those insights, because we get storms, but we don't get storms of this magnitude very often. So we're looking at those technologies, using drones with LiDAR that can help you kind of see through the foliage and figure out how many poles you have broken, at least get a good estimate. Those are all some of the things that we're looking at doing going forward.
Thank you. So, Chair, what I heard there was not able to really answer the specific question at this time, but I do think it would be great for the analysis that both Metro's doing and the NES is doing to kind of understand from what we learned from the storm and how we've adapted our best practices. Could we have shaved 3 days off? Could we have shaved 1 day off? Could we have shaved 6 days off? It would just be interesting to know how our projected improvements are going to impact the next event, because there will be another one. So I had a quick question for water. I see y'all have a lot of folks here. This is a question about easements and vegetation, trees that are down in stormwater easements. So whoever is best equipped to, Dr. Potter, thank you. I've got at least 2 constituents, and I know it's happening all over the county, who've had trees fall into their property from, it's private property, but it's a stormwater easement, and there's a lot of questions about who is responsible for removing the vegetation, because people are hearing from insurance companies that the insurance company won't remove things from a stormwater creek. And I just wondered if you could speak a little bit to what folks should be doing with all these trees that are down.
I have a very short answer to that question, is I don't know. So I need to talk to Metro Legal about that, because I don't want to even try to answer that question having no idea what the answer is.
Thanks, sir. And I've kind of been telling folks that I'm going to work with Water to try to get more information about that, and it sounds like that's forthcoming. I'll connect with Tom Palco and y'all's team, but I would treat private property that has an easement across it as private property otherwise for the time being. But maybe we'll find out some more information about if that easement has any kind of impact. That's not legal advice. I'm not a lawyer. The last question I have is a very kind of big picture one for OEM. We've heard discussion. We know that some cities have standalone OEM departments. Ours is kind of an organization of folks from other departments. Do we have any kind of perspective on if a standalone OEM department would be beneficial for Nashville? Is it something that's been discussed? Is it something that we've considered budgeting for, staffing? I just wanted to hear from Director Swan about that possibility.
Yes, thank you for the question. Well, I can tell you from other cities' perspective, they really marvel at how well we work together. That comes because the OEM is umbrellaed under the Nashville Fire Department, so it expands our capability. We have a relationship with every department in the city and also our state and federal partnership. As you stated, you heard me say earlier, of how fluent things worked. I never got questioned about decisions that were made. Matter of fact, any department head that I questioned or asked to assist with something was very much on board. Now, we've had so many events in Nashville that makes us really equipped to be able to handle emergencies. Just every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, if it's just a plain event from a concert to just being downtown. But this city has grown tremendously, and all the events that we've had, from bombings to tornadoes to floods, we know each other. We work well together, and I think this is a beautiful relationship, and I see no need in a standalone. Again, at the close of business, our departments work well together, and I think it was evidence. And when you see how quick the shelters not only would stand up, but putting together a transportation system under that short of time. And I can continue on and on and on with that. So again, absolutely, I think it works beautiful. And you asked the question, if I can't answer it, about the generators. We do have 40 plus generators that we still have, and NES and codes in our BOAS working together. And as stated earlier by Brent, if they identify due to a weatherhead or whatever they determine, then that coordination will work with BOAD to get a generator there. And now we have, I think, I don't know the last count, but I think it was 42 or 45. But if we run out of generators, as long as they are available through our TEMA, then we'll be able to request them.
Thank you, sir. And if I may have just a brief follow-up, and then I'll be done. I think whether it's at OEM, mayor's office, something, when we see these things on the horizon, activating the hospitality folks with the accommodations, activating VOAD just a little bit like ahead of time, I think would be really useful. So that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Benedict, and after Councilmember Benedict will be Vice Chair Prepti, and then Councilmember Cash.
Thank you, Chair. I have I'm going to be quick with my questions, but I first wanted to call out, somebody reached out to me and called Mr. Jones, Assistant Director Jones, a Jedi Master. I want to make sure that he does indeed get credit. He did a phenomenal job. And I did hear about one of his employees who actually his home caught on fire as the power was out. And he came to work the very next day. He did not stop working his 12 and 14-hour shifts. And that just demonstrates the level of commitment that our employees have. And I know that throughout every department and NES, our employees were superb. And that includes the line workers in the field as well as the people behind the scenes working from the office helping to manage the data that went through. On the water and sewer side, I want to commend water and sewer as well. I think we talk about stormwater a lot when we see storms, but if we didn't have clean water, we wouldn't have been able to drip our pipes, and they wouldn't have gone down the sewer. And so now I want to get to my questions.
Your questions.
Thank you.
You saw that look.
I saw that look. So this is a question for every department head. I don't know if we can start with Director Alarcone, and then Chief Swan, whoever's near, and then Mr. Potter, and then Ms. And then the CEO. So, Chair, I'd like to understand who's ultimately responsible for each department's response to this storm.
The department head.
That's right. Okay, thank you.
It would be me.
Thank you.
I'm responsible for every activity associated with Metro Water Services.
Thank you.
I am ultimately responsible for ensuring smooth operations at NES.
Okay, and I do have one follow-up question for NES, Chair. I want to understand how many public relations or communications employees are on staff at NES.
We have 3 communications personnel on staff at NES.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
All right. Thank you, Councilmember. Vice Chair. There you are. Looking for you on that board.
Perfect, thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll attempt to be quick and not verbose and loquacious as I normally am. So I think I have 3 or 4 questions. First, starting with NDOT. Green Hills and Oak Hill were hit particularly hard with this storm. And so I want to talk about or ask a particular question as it relates to the pre-storm mitigating measures and their efficacy, because in my area I saw the plow trucks salting and brining the roads Saturday after we had the snow event. But my particular question is, what is the efficacy of utilizing salt and brine in advance of an ice storm? How effective is it in these particular kinds of weather events?
In this particular event, on the early onset, it was just a snow day. Saturday was a snow day, so we brined Thursday and Friday, 2,472 lane miles, brined them all, and had great reaction and effect from that. That helped us stay on top of our primaries and secondaries through Saturday. Not a lot of help, you know, once you get to it, and we talk about this all the time, we use calcium chloride in addition to salt when we get down to extreme temperatures, anything below 17 degrees. Not a lot of help and assistance. That's the reason it's so important that the pre-application of the brine on the front end is so important to stop that bond. Because all of you have areas that you're familiar with that once the ice got there, if it never received any treatment, it stayed there for days.
Thank you for that. Very much appreciated. And then my next question is for NES. Earlier, we discussed next steps and particular measures, and we talked about resiliency for our grid. And one thing that I think that this storm particularly showed for a lot of folks is that the resiliency of our grid is not just a public health and a public safety issue, but also a national security issue. So aside from weather events, I'm curious if you all can talk about the security and the hardening of our grid. And one thing that I'm particularly concerned about are conventional and non-conventional acts of warfare against our grid, which could potentially take down certain areas of our city for months on end. So could you talk about what measures are currently in place and other considerations that are being taken under advisement in the future for ensuring the resiliency of our grid?
From a resiliency perspective, we have some level of sectionalization already built into our system where we can isolate. A lot of our customers are not tied into just one substation. We have the ability to serve customers from multiple sources, which builds in some resiliency. And by sectionalization, I meant when you have, say, someone hits a pole, car hits a pole, it may knock out power to 1,200 customers because that line serves a large span of people. But then we're able to, using digital technology, isolate that outage to just the customers immediately around it, allowing the rest of the customers to be restored that are not directly impacted. We are evaluating additional technologies. We're doing an undergrounding study and generally looking at, are there different things we can do to ensure fewer outages, such as, you know, in areas where they have a lot more significant weather, they'll have shorter spans of wire because it doesn't create as much of a topple effect with poles. They'll also have fragmentable pieces so that if this breaks, it's not going to pull things down. There are a variety of things that we are evaluating doing, and we do have things already built into our system to provide that. Brent, do you have any additional?
You also touched on cybersecurity, so I'm going to run through a few things. So in October of 2024, we went through a crisis plan and went through several different crises that could possibly happen. In September of 2025, we did a cybersecurity drill. In October of this year, the 16th through the 18th, our system operations group operated out of our disaster recovery location as though we would have had separation from our system. So they spent the weekend working in a disaster recovery site, which is fully operational and NERC compliant. And then on November 18th, we did the Grid X drill, which is a national drill every other year. We did that at MLGW to partner up with another large utility to learn from each other. And so those are some things we are doing to exercise ourselves and exercise our system within NERC. Our NERC compliance requires us to exercise those types of things on a regular basis and make sure we are as prepared and able to operate the system if something like a cyber attack were to happen.
Thank you for that. And just a brief follow-up, and directed both for NES, OEM, and I do see Deputy Chief Gilder in the back, so he might be able to, or might want to jump in on this one. But I'm curious, sort of just in very broad strokes, when it comes to disaster preparedness, what planning and coordination in advance and emergency contingencies are in place, and the coordination between OEM, M&PD, and NES, if you all could touch on that very broadly.
Yes, and so in some of those drills, we have those spelled out as what we will do, and some of those assignments are made. We remember the issue a couple years ago where we had to respond through some of the rolling outages that we had. That partnership also strengthened our relationship with OEM again, or that event, and so we have continued to exercise those. I want to touch on something that also, from a resiliency perspective and some of the prep, a little different from the question you have. Since May, we've been working on system hardening. We've begun developing a 10-year system hardening plan, which is a comprehensive look at all things that are needed. We also have started deploying LiDAR. Teresa has mentioned it a couple times. We flew in August LiDAR flight and ran a satellite imagery of our system over 500 miles to get a better idea of what that possibly could benefit. We have also looked at other technologies to enhance all of our operations, from vegetation to reliability. Those all started in May as an effort to modernize our system. We're committed to modernizing, and all of your questions speak to making sure we do everything well in on-the-ground partnerships with OEM. We have people ready that already are assigned to go to OEM when something does happen. We also are working to modernize.
Great, thank you. You may have another quick question. I am just going to remind you to address the chair, not because I am overly formal, but it does make it easier on the M&N folks to focus in on you as you are talking as well. So there are functional reasons for that. But go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Madam Chair, if anybody else wants to jump in on this question.
Yes, thank you for the question. At OEM, we definitely do a lot of training with our departments. We train with our local airport. We do a lot of special operations training, especially with our police partners, PD. We're in constant training. We train with our military. We do live activities as well as tabletop exercises that we do. So again, when it comes to resiliency, we look outside the box, and it's not just about local partnership, but we definitely deal with our state and federal partners. So I think as we move forward, the events that we go through, especially this challenging event, this was definitely challenging. The highlights are we do work well together, and it's very important that you know your partners. Know your partners before you have an event. That's our rule. If you do, because things get sensitive. When moments are heated and an emergency is happening, the last thing you want to do is feel like you stepped on somebody's toes. But if you have a strong partnership with them, it just makes things work smoother. And afterwards, we do after action and we'll talk about it. But there is quite a bit of challenging circumstances that we deal with. And I'll be more than happy to provide that to Metro Council, some of the stuff that we've done, Tin Cup, so many things with the military. I cannot think of them right now, but I'll be more than happy to share that. You'll probably be amazed at the work that we do. We have one of the things that we do with our aircraft, or with helicopter training with our military. We do air rescues. We have our HEART team. So there's a lot of things that we do, but I'll be more than happy to get that information and share it with you guys. Thank you.
In the interest of time, I'll say ditto to that. But yes, no, like Chief Swan said, we have an emergency contingency section that prepares for all sorts of man-made and natural disasters, and then they work closely with our OEM partners, and we drill through a lot of these possible scenarios on an ongoing basis, working with other departments, working with our state and federal partners as well to prepare for events.
Thank you for that. And then my last question for now, Madam Chair and Chair Huffman, it could either be answered directly by OEM or by the administration. I just want to make sure that we're getting a full accounting of all of the resources that have already been mobilized up to this point and what we are still waiting on. So I know that there have been disaster declarations, that there's been some FEMA mobilization. Can we talk about what resources we have received from FEMA and what we are still waiting on from FEMA?
Yeah, I think OEM is probably the best to answer that question.
Thank you. As you know, we have been approved for our public assistance, about 60 point some million, which this really sort of helps for assisting of emergency work and repair for replacement of damaged facilities. So that's very important as far as the public assistance. But the individual assistant, that's still under review, and I know that's where most people are going to be interested in, because this is your homeowners and people that have calculated damages and stuff for that, and they are looking for that to be approved. So currently, Nashville has opened up a disaster recovery center for this would give locals resources that we already have in the system that sort of helps guide them. But I know we're waiting on FEMA, and we're waiting on FEMA as well. We're hoping this week we have conversations when they're going to be coming into town, when everything is approved. Once that happens, it's a slow process to first be able to provide them a place to have a brick and mortar, which we've already got that established. Once they get here, they will be in the neighborhoods going around to individuals, knocking on doors, and also they'll be set up in our center. So again, it's a tough question. We're just as anxious as everyone else, and we're hoping that this the individual assistance will be approved very soon. But it is under review at this moment. Hope I've answered your question. I wish I could have a crystal ball. I could tell you exactly when. But one thing we do know, when it is approved for a city, we'll be ready to accommodate whatever needs they can to help speed the process up.
Thank you for that. And I just wanted to say thank you to all the department heads for being here to answer our questions. And thank you to every single one of the line workers and linemen and the folks who have been on the ground every single day to get us back to some semblance of normalcy. And with that, no further questions.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I would add, if anybody in the room is not getting the email updates from Austin Travis with TEMA, please let the council office know, and I can help coordinate that. He has been sending updates on federal assistance received and been responsive to my emails, which has been helpful in understanding this as well, since that does flow through the state. We have Cash, then Coopin, then Johnston. Council Member Cash, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I have appreciated, I think we've gotten some great information. I appreciate everyone being here. I think there were some things that were done well. I do echo others. I was really impressed with NDOT from the get-go, customer service and communication. And I guess the umbrella question is, how are we going to better help NES customers who are also our constituents? Like we love helping our constituents. It's our job to do so. We're legislators, but it's also our job to connect them to different executive branch departments and the mayor's office. And so we're used to doing that. But, and this was a crisis, a once in a generation storm. And we were inundated with like collectively thousands of emails and calls. And, a lot of them were coming to us because they were NES customers and they weren't getting answers from NES. And I think over the course of the, 2 weeks, it got better. But I guess I want to know, kind of drill down on some of the things that I observed through this process, or that were issues to me getting information. And I'm not just talking about, there was the big question, when am I going to get back power? And I know that we were in a crisis mode, and we're not going to say, oh, Tuesday between 10 and 12, we'll be there, just like Hiller or some of the other companies, right? I got that question wasn't going to get the kind of specific answer. And so I'm really talking about a lot of other questions. Like should we, although on that question, should we have been more explicit and cautioned people, like it's gonna be a while. So like, if you need to make other plans, make other plans. I think we could have been more explicit earlier on that. Like one of my questions that I struggled to get an answer to was about brownouts. I was asking for like 3 to 4 days. I finally got it in the first briefing, which was on like day 6, right? It was, and the I don't remember his name, but the kind of techie guy that started answering questions. Like he answered my question about brownouts like it was nothing. There were questions about downlines, about specific things. I don't need to go down the whole list. So I hope, like, part of my question is, will we get FAQs faster than we did this time? Will we get a briefing faster than we did this time? I kind of am curious about, like, I understand best what the communication between NES and us, but I question that if there were communication issues with other departments. I know I had a major intersection traffic light that still didn't have power, like 7 days in, dangerous intersection, and NDOT didn't know why they couldn't put it back up. Yes, my question is how are we going to better help NES customers? And I kind of had a bullet list of things. I have another question. Let me go ahead and ask this, and this question can be like a yes or no question. I don't need to get into it. But I do also want us, my colleagues, and our staff to, like, we're kind of evaluating and assessing other departments, and I do want us to take time to assess our own department and have a discussion about how we might have responded better, how our staff might have helped us in a proactive way better. And I guess my question is that conversation, like, coming? Those are my questions. Thank you.
So we'll start with the NES question, and then we'll go to the next question.
So in the last 3 years, we have increased the ability to communicate during outages, and on some of our normal large outages, we've sent communications on an hourly basis. We continued that in this storm. The biggest issue was we did not have good information. As we've talked about several times, the assessment challenge of this storm and its scale was something that really challenged our communication ability. We are evaluating now and changing our process for the ability to handle a storm of this size, having gone through this. We are committed to making that an improvement in our whole system so that we are able to respond quickly with more detailed information. What we are unfamiliar with is how much more quickly will we get details to provide that information in a way that is meaningful in a storm of this scale. We're committed to doing it. One of the things that we know when we have another storm like this, getting out in front and really setting that worst case scenario, as we went through those first few days, we are used to within 2 to 3 days knowing the total duration of a storm. Within 2 days, that is a normal time for us that we have been able to forecast just what is going on. This storm of this proportion has challenged that. So we have now changed our operations through this storm, and we will continue to improve that and make sure we are ready. And we will treat any storm that it comes through at scale that way.
Thanks. One quick follow-up, if I may.
Yeah.
Some of the folks, especially the deeper we got into this, and we're kind of getting to customers trying to find out, like, what's going on in day 8, day 9, day 10. Like, they are in crisis mode and pretty desperate for help. And so I wonder if your customer service representatives have gotten any training, or if you are open to training about not just how to get them quick information, but also how to speak to people in crisis. And part of it is getting them answers. Part of it is calming them down and reassuring them that help is on the way, even if it's not like 15 minutes away, right?
That's correct. And we do record our calls. And through this storm, we have learned several of our employees that will definitely want some of that help, and we'll do it across our organization to make sure we train more to be prepared in the future.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I think Councilmember Cash's second question was whether or not we internally at Metro, NES, thank you. You may sit down or stand or whatever. You don't have to just stand there at that left mic. The second question was whether internally at Metro we are looking at our own communication. And I would direct that to the administration table if that is okay. If that is
I was talking about the council specifically.
Okay.
Actually. And I just, I don't need to go deep into it or what the answers are, but just that, and I'll add that we were in a reflective period, and that reflective period, I believe, kind of was ending as this was starting. And so this type of situation might be something worth reflecting as part of that process, if it's not too late.
Yes, I agree. And I would also recognize Chair Huffman.
Thank you, Councilmember Cash. You hit on to a point that is a point of contention for me. So prior to this ice storm, there was a small collection of council members that really wanted to create essentially an emergency preparedness checklist for all scenarios: ice storms, tornadoes, single family fires, whatever it comes, essentially, whatever falls within that parameter. I'm going to be following up on next steps, but there will be a small group of us that will be evaluating how we can improve our communications. And I want to highlight that it takes all of us to work together on that, right? We're only as good as the information that we're given a lot of times. And as a part of this process, the only thing that I'll ask all of our friends that are here is, when we come asking, like, help us help you, essentially, when we come asking for these things, we want to make your lives easier as much as our constituents, to make sure that we're delivering for them.
Thank you. All right. So next is going to be Councilmember Coopin, then Johnston, then Vo. Councilmember Coopin, you are recognized.
Thank you, chairs, for hosting this meeting, and thank you for all the departments for being here. First, I want to say that I'm just so proud to serve on this body. To see my colleagues on Metro Council step up during this storm has been incredible. Sharing messages, sharing communication, getting the word out, serving constituents, doing live videos. It really was a bright moment in a dark time to see how this body stepped up. So really want to elevate that. And then, of course, the line workers who were working 12 to 16-hour shifts in the cold and the rain. My first question is for NES. I want to understand, when did you all know that the weather was shifting from a snow to an ice storm, and whose responsibility is it to track those changes and build that preparedness plan?
I'm going to go through some details to get us to the start of this. On Tuesday, January 20th, we were actively monitoring the forecast, knowing that there was severe weather. We initiate our storm protocols, and that is out of our control room, where I talked about earlier, the ones that go to the disaster recovery site. They began alerting all of the NES folks about what the weather is. They monitor the National Weather Service, the utility electric tools that we have available for different wind and weather patterns that are coming through, and we use that information to make our plans. At that same time, our managers that manage the contract crews start reaching out, and they began on Tuesday letting the contract crews know that we will need them because of the impending weather. And on Friday, our internal teams began rotating on a 12-hour shift instead of their normal shift. That 12-hour shift gets us to be able to rotate extra crews to be available throughout that potential weather period. And then crews from Maryland, Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, Mississippi, and Tennessee were contacted early, and they began mobilizing early that late Saturday night and Sunday morning as they were leaving some of those areas that they were being held to work in. We had some of our own crews that normally work on our system as contractors here at that time. We got up to 400 in that first 24 hours crews here. And then I'll go through a list of, there was another question that others had asked about the list of how many we ended up mobilizing. We were able to get up to 700 by day 3. And I'm going to pull up just a little detail to make sure we cover that, how quickly we ramped up. There goes that. So we've got to 740 by day 3, 900 by day 4, 930, thank you, 1,006 by January 30th, 1,112 by January 31st, 1,246 by February 1st, 1,790 by February 2nd, and 1,920 by February 4th. Different stages in that ramp up were where we would reach out to either our contractors that normally work on our system or contractors that we had not normally worked with, and we started to bring those in as well. Also, we reached out to our TVA local power companies through our mutual aid agreements and ended up with 196 of their personnel, and then 27 from the large public power companies. Ended up Austin, Texas being the one that was able to get here for that. And so through this effort, we were able to use all avenues to get ramped up. Each day, as we've mentioned, the assessment started to unveil even more, and scaling For one, our ability for our crews to be able to make the line safe to work. Getting too many people at once could make that unsafe. So safety was our first and foremost requirement in this, and scaling in a way that also got power restored as quickly as possible. Through this, we have learned how to scale at this level, and in the future, we have broke through some of those hurdles that might have previously existed.
Thank you. So a follow-up to that, it sounds like starting Tuesday, y'all were tracking the weather. I also heard a number of times in the response that part of the delay in restoration and one of the challenges was the kind of surprise shift from snow to ice. At what point during that tracking of the weather did it start to become apparent that it was going to be an ice storm versus a snowstorm?
Yeah, great point. On Thursday, we met with the largest utilities of the local power companies of Tennessee Valley, and at that point, it looked like the ice was going to be in Memphis. On Saturday, when that ice pattern shifted, we began making those calls. As the forecast showed, Saturday ice was headed directly to Nashville. We started making those calls, and as soon as Sunday morning, when those companies were able to release their crews, that's when they started mobilizing this direction.
So Thursday was about when that ice storm, when it started to be seen that the shift was happening. Is that correct?
Thursday was when it was more focused on Memphis. Saturday was when it started to shift more toward us, but ice was in the area. All of us were working on which crews we would have available and which ones we would hold on to.
So I guess, and the reason I'm kind of asking this is, and maybe it wouldn't have impacted the response, but my inner weather nerd came out during this storm, and as early as the Tuesday the 20th, National Weather Service was predicting, or the forecast discussions, the deep dive into what could possibly happen, was talking about the potential for ice, and it said 11:49 a.m. on the 21st said that it's trending a certain direction. What does that mean for Middle Tennessee if that trend remains? That brings into play significant to crippling ice storm. It talks about the risk of power outages and things like that. So I just want to make sure that I guess my question would be, in the future, obviously it did shift, but that indication that it was shifting started kind of Tuesday or so, like when we were starting to track the weather. So what could we do next time such that if that was indicated earlier, we could be prepared more so that actually might happen?
Yeah, so we've made some connections with more contractors than we've ever had on our system before. Those contracts exist now. Those will be people that we will mobilize in the future early. So that with those other crews that normally work on our system and are maybe held at other utilities that we know we will have a little bit of a delay on, that we'll get others to be able to mobilize quicker.
And we talked a lot about tree trimming. What tree trimming was done in anticipation of this outage? Again, back to the weather discussions, it was talking pretty much since Tuesday about the growing potential for ice, and mentioned specifically tree damage causing power outage throughout that week. So what tree trimming was done in anticipation of this storm in particular?
Yeah, so we are on a cycle trim that we annually trim our system at about 1,200 miles per year. We were 12% ahead in November of our cycle trimming. We did not do specific actions through leading up to this storm. I think as a practice in the industry has not been the norm for that, but I think absolutely, as we learned from this, a commitment to every action leading into this type of an event, you will see us make those in the future.
And what would it take to go, I know we're on a 4-year tree trimming cycle, what would it take to go to a yearly tree trimming cycle where we cover all of our wires and don't have a multi-year lag?
Let me provide that answer for you at another time. I think that's not something we've analyzed. I think the 3 to 4 year cycle is what is more norm from how much you can pull back, but we'll look at that.
And Chair, just a couple more, I'm almost done.
Yes, please, quickly, because we have 14 more people in the queue after you who would like to ask questions.
There were a number of fires that were caused by power coming back online. What caused those fires to occur?
So I'm still a little bit in active recovery mode. I have not heard the details of all of those. We will be investigating as part of both after action and the work we're doing here. So we'll get that information.
Appreciate that. And then what marketing was done for the critical care power list, and what can be done in the future, and what can we do to get that word out so people that are on that critical needs list for power can get added?
Yeah, so I will focus on what we're going to do, which is going to promote more and more of that early on. We do send out information ahead of the storm for a lot of customers, including the critical care, but it's embedded in a lot of customer newsletter that needs to be more targeted through this event, through the next one.
Perfect, thank you.
If I may, I'd like to add that we can certainly use the council's assistance in spreading the word on that program. We should have way more customers in it than we currently do. We have 300 and some customers participating in that program. That's right, isn't it? Yes. And I would like to promote it more because I think it would be really beneficial for us to know where all of these customers are. Because we worked, the Chiefs team worked with us over at OEM to, they went out and did wellness checks on the people that remained without power. They delivered generators. We can't do that coordination if we don't know they're out there. The current process for signing up is that the customer needs to call our customer service line. We will provide them with a form and an application form. Once that application is cleared, we provide them with something for their doctor to sign saying that they need, that they have life-sustaining equipment for which they need electricity, and then we can add them to our program. So just wanted to add that.
All right, Councilmember Johnston, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chair. So on the continuing this, if you stay right there. So I appreciate that we are going to continue with this robust mutual aid contracts with our linemen that are ready to go in our system, that are trained up so we don't have to start from scratch. I think that's good, and hopefully we will keep that going. The other thing that I think is important for us to focus in on are also vegetation crews, because that's one thing that our linemen were waiting on, because our linemen don't cut away trees and vegetation that are buried under lines. And so that's one thing that my constituents were watching, were linemen waiting, kind of like a surgeon is waiting for a patient to be prepped. And so you can have 1,000 linemen waiting to do the work, but when everything is buried under the vegetation that we failed to manage properly, that's on top of everything, that was a problem. And so while we didn't scale up properly, I don't think, in anticipation of the storm, and we were focusing on scaling up and getting people integrated into the system, we also did not scale up fast enough on the vegetation crews that were here to supplement our NDOT crews as well. Would you agree?
We will increase in the future. One of the things that was a challenge in this was both between us getting our line crews to be able to let our vegetation crews work safely. They can't work a line until that energy is sure that it is not on. There's a safety component. So there is a scalability across this whole event. Also, NDOT did a great job of getting out ahead of us. They also could not work unless they were certain that our lines were de-energized. So there's a cyclical impact of this. I agree with you. We want to add more. In the next events, we will definitely look to increasing those staffs. There's a limiting factor in any one of these events that we definitely want to keep everybody safe. That is the primary, and making sure that is done. There is some of that has to come first.
Sure, I understand de-energizing before, but at the same time, you still have to have those crews to handle that, because it does take time to do all that. One of the things I really appreciate Ms. Santos for talking about and asking for the independent review, and I appreciate our board for doing that. I wanted to ask if anybody's here that could speak to the timeline for that independent review, and if you will, do you have any information on that?
Yes, certainly. We are pursuing an independent vendor to do an after-action review. The board is driving that process, and I have asked that we requested the vendor that it be completed in 90 days with some stage gate information. I would like, as I outlined earlier, we're looking at already moving forward with some improvements. So I would like information along the way, such as a 30-day report, so we can get feedback via the report to outline any additional improvements that may need to be made. But I'd like the report to be completed in 90 days or less, if possible. We do need to get the board through their selection process and get someone on contract before we can begin.
I appreciate that. I think, any report is only as good as who's doing it. So I'm hoping that you all are looking at organizations like NERC, so the which is North American Electric Reliability Corporation, or their regional component, which is CERC. They do event analysis, but they also do reliability assessment and performance analysis. And so I'm also wondering, while they are there, to not only do an event analysis, but to do something more than that so that we can have more of a comprehensive. If they're already going to be doing an event analysis, let's go ahead and see what all we can do to prepare. Because I think what this has shown is that not only did we not respond to this event properly, but we have some pretty critical failures and deficiencies that I think need to be looked at from a just system-wide that I think need to be addressed. Is that agreeable? I really want to know who the vendor is going to be.
Well, we are certainly familiar with NERC because we have to follow NERC regulations because we have high voltage on our system. I don't know who the vendor will be. Our board is making that selection. But there are a variety of vendors that do these reports for organizations following significant weather events such as this.
Okay. I know that this is obviously a very expensive recovery, and I'm really worried. I think everyone is worried about rate increases. I have been made aware of several contracts that have been entered into for lobbyists, not only from the board, but also from NES, which I find to be a little bit disingenuous. I did look through our documents portal, and I haven't been able to find those. So I'm wondering if those are going to be disclosed to everyone so that we can know exactly what you all are spending for this crisis management and relationship management with state legislators, this body, PR, whatever spin it is. I personally just find it to be very disingenuous. I think people just want the truth, and I think you can just look people in the eye and tell them the truth. I don't think we need to be spending tens of thousands, if not more, on that. But I'm wondering if those contracts are being buried in, say, Finn Partners multi-million-dollar contracts so that it's not subject to FOIA requests, or will those be disclosed?
I will need to get back to you on the format of those contracts. I'm unsure of how those have been engaged.
Okay, well, there's multiple of them. And so I would like to see them, and I know the rest of this body would too.
We can get that for you.
Thank you.
If you'll just share that with the council office too, I'm sure multiple people will have interest in that, and they can disseminate that in ways that don't violate public meetings. We have Councilmember Vo, and then Stiles, then Vice Chair Ewing. Oh, Councilmember Vo, I'm so sorry about that.
It's okay. Thank you so much, chairs. My first two questions are for NES, so thank you so much. My first question is, customers are asking for clarity about billing during the recent outages. Can NES confirm whether electric meters were recording usage while power was out, and whether any charges, fees, or costs of any kind were applied during customer outage days? If refunds are not possible, will NES issue a clear public statement explaining why and how billing is handled in outage situations?
I certainly appreciate that question. Customers should not have to pay for electricity they did not use, so they were not being charged for energy usage during the time that their meters were not working.
Great, thank you. My next question is, what role does TVA play in ensuring grid resiliency for NES workers? And how do NES and TVA coordinate before, during, and after major outage events? What resources does TVA make available to NES to strengthen resilience and speed restoration?
Well, TVA is our regulator, so they have a variety of roles in which they serve. During storm coordination, we discuss with them in advance a variety of things, because if their transmission lines coming into us go down, we're not able to provide power to our customers. So we want to make sure that our feeders are going to be live so that we can receive power from TVA. That's one of the coordination points. And they did have some feeders out during this storm. None of them were coming in to Nashville, so we were fortunate from that standpoint. They did provide resources. They helped us with having some engineering teams to do damage assessments. They also had some team members at our headquarters just assisting with system control and emergency response.
Thank you. My next question is for OEM. As we plan for future warming shelters, what criteria are used to select locations and how can we strengthen that process to ensure sites are accessible, inclusive, and well distributed? Some community members have suggested schools as potential options, and we're curious why they weren't an option or chosen this time.
All right, thank you for that question. We do pre-plan, as I stated earlier. If we have a situation where we need shelters, we look at things like the community centers because they're just geographically located throughout Davidson County. And then Metro schools have been strong partners with us. Matter of fact, we used Margaret Allen Middle School for a short 2 or 3 days span for the shelters. But we knew we was trying to get things back into a regular working flow. So with Metro schools wanting to get back into flow, we actually downgraded that shelter and moved it to Bellevue Community Center. So Metro schools have been strong partners with allowing us to use their schools for shelters. But again, we try to look at the area that's mostly affected. And with this ice storm, it wasn't like our tornadoes where it may come into a certain area. We can really be easily pick out a zone. It was pretty much all over Davidson County. So we used areas that we thought that were accessible and easy to get to. And with that being said, we made adjustments as needed. And that's how we sort of flow with understanding where it should go. But the pre-planning is the most important part. When we have collaboration with Parks Department or Metro schools, that opens the door for us to be able to really sit back and look and see where we could better put it to best service the public, and that's what we do. Yeah.
Great. And my last two questions, I believe, are for administration. I just want to understand, how will translation services be a standard practice and not an afterthought moving forward as a city?
Thank you. Councilmember, that's an area we're constantly working to improve. I know when it comes to the website, most users access it in their native language, but when it comes to verbal communications, that sort of thing, that is something that we know there's a lot of work to do, and we'll continue at.
Thank you. And last question, how can WeGo make fares free during state of emergencies or crisis like we have experienced? And I don't know if, I know WeGo is not here, but if someone can speak to that, or that, I just wanted to make sure we asked about that.
Councilmember, I don't know. I don't know if that goes to WeGo's board or how that is decided. Sorry.
It's okay. Thank you.
I think that question can be submitted till we go to my understanding is that the board does have to vote on it from where we talked about it in the fall. And I would encourage folks to continue to ask that question if they're interested in it. Councilmember Stiles, and then Vice Chair Ewing, and then Councilmember Suara. I know we're getting back up here. Go ahead, Councilmember. Oh, Councilmember Stiles, I do have to light you up. There you go.
Thank you very much. I'm going to be brief. I do want to thank the linemen that have put in time. They have missed time with their families. Some of them didn't have electricity. They did a tremendous job for us. I am extremely, extremely, extremely grateful. This has been an absolute cluster on multiple levels, not just with NES, but with Metro too. And we really haven't had a chance to really address the Metro issues. I will do that at a later date, personally, and work all that out. My first question is for NES. My second question is going to be for the administration. So for 3 years, I have worked with NES in regards to the 0 degree storm that came through, and Antioch and Cambridge is consistently impacted. So in our meeting, we discussed $250 million being invested. So I'd like to know what has been spent in these last 3 years in terms of the texting opportunities and the grid, if you have those numbers on you. And I think I had one more. Nope, that's it. I'm going to only give you one today.
Okay. Brent may have some more detail to. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Brent may have, I think he may have some of the figures that you're seeking. But with regard to the texting, the large amount of funding you referenced a moment ago, the 250, that was part of a project for a customer information system upgrade that's really billing, customer data. I know you and I have talked about customer interval data and an app. That's all part of that project. The texting ended up being part of another system that we already had installed. And clearly there are some refinements that need to be made with it, because as Brent shared earlier, it indicates to you that your power has been restored if your circuit has been restored, not your specific property. And so that's one of the reasons people are getting erroneous text messages. But we've made significant investments in our infrastructure and have plans for your area of town too for additional improvements. So I'd welcome you to come over and meet with me and our engineering team to look at that.
I'm going to take you up on that. Thank you very much.
Please do.
Second question for the administration. We had a council meeting last week, and the customary question is asked, are there any messages from the mayor? There were no messages, nor was the mayor present. And tonight we're sitting here as a council, finally here to be able to ask NES and other departments questions. Where is the mayor? Why is he not here? Why are we not in this together? Mr. Rosenberg.
Councilmember, the mayor's been very working the hours that you have, frankly, and longer doing work. He is not here at this moment. He has other things that that was probably a conflict for being here right now. I'm very thankful for the work that he's done, the leadership he's done throughout this process, building bridges, bringing people together on it. I appreciate that. And I'm sorry he's not here to speak to you tonight, council member.
All right, Councilmember Stiles, looks like she's done. She's sitting. So we're going to go Vice Chair Ewing, then Councilmember Swar, and then Councilmember Porterfield.
Thank you, chairs. I am not going to monologue. I promise I'm not. However, I do have to point out that when we as city leadership and NES leadership, when we're all talking about resiliency, we really have to include a discussion about how we take care of our vulnerable populations. And I'm not just talking about people on the critical care list. They are certainly very important and they are very present on my mind. But I'm also talking about the very real needs and concerns of the disabilities community. I'm talking about renters who were evicted from their apartments. We have a problem with resiliency for our community, for our population. And so that, I would like that to be part of our discussion. All of my questions, I'm sorry to say, have to go to NES. I do appreciate everyone being here. I appreciate all of our really hardworking NES and city staff. You all have done an amazing bit of work, and I don't take any of that for granted. Okay, so most of my questions relate to the critical care program. You had mentioned wanting to scale up the program and not having the ability to have visibility into how many people could or should be on the program. I want to take a little bit of an issue with scaling it up at the moment when it doesn't seem to be functioning very well. So the question I have to start with is, how can you make meaningful changes to the critical care program, improve oversight to ensure that the program delivers on what it needs to, and how will you execute assessing and making improvements to this program before you work to expand it?
Well, I believe it's important to go ahead and start getting the information about where those customers are located. So while we're improving the program, I think we need to go ahead and be gathering that information. But as we evaluate prioritization as we restore power, I'd like to put together a ranking of where they will fall, because I think with this storm, it was such an extraordinary storm that they were trying to get the large circuits back on before we started prioritizing the individual homes of people that were on the program. So as we go through our post-storm assessment, that's one of the things that we will be looking at. Is there more structure we can lend to that program to ensure that these customers get priority, and how do we streamline that?
I think one of the issues, thank you for that. One of the issues I think that we have across the board has been managing expectations. So when people were put on this critical care list, they were under the impression that that meant that NES had their back. That if they had a child who relied on electricity for oxygen or for key medications that needed to be refrigerated, that they would be covered. So I really do hope to see improvements. I'm always willing to come and talk to you guys and try and represent the community members that have reached out to me.
Vice Chair, sorry to remind you.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm supposed to.
That's okay. They just
And
gotta
I'm
get you on
monologuing.
that camera.
Okay. Let's see. By the way, I collaborated with CM Weiner on these questions, so I am going to ask her to catch anything that I might miss.
Y'all did that here in this meeting, right? Just to be clear.
Yes, during the meeting. Telepathically, of course. Okay. So I wanted to also ask, like, as you're thinking about the critical care list, what accommodations or thought could be put into helping those in the disabilities community who may not be on the critical care list, but become exceptionally vulnerable during events like this? And I mention this because the critical care list addresses a certain section of the disabilities community that has very specific vulnerabilities related to equipment that might require electricity, but that doesn't cover the range of vulnerabilities that we're seeing and that we have seen during this crisis. So as you're going through and making changes and assessing this program, could you please include an assessment of those other populations?
We can certainly consider that as part of our evaluation.
Okay, thank you. Also, this is just a suggestion. Have your key account managers work with CMs to get information on assisted living, independent living, nursing and memory care facilities in their parts of town. Because last week or the week before last, that was a lot of what I was doing. Just 3 more questions and I'll be very, very quick. If a resident has a specific issue relating to a tree that is poised to potentially damage a power line now or in future, how should they get that information to NES?
Certainly calling our customer service line should get them to the right people.
Okay. How is communication handled with satellite cities? I think there was a little bit of a breakdown there with cities like Forest Hills. We also have Oak Hill, we have Berry Hill, we have Belmead, and they can certainly help with the communication piece that seemed to fall short.
We have representatives on our team who were in coordination with those cities. Certainly making more robust communications is welcomed in time of a crisis. But I am aware that some of those communities stepped up and helped clear roads and make sure our crews were headed where they needed to be within their service areas.
Thank you. And last question. Many of my residents expressed that they were caught a little bit unaware about their responsibilities in repairing the weatherhead and the meter on their home. And it occurred to me that there is space for improved customer education and outreach. So I wanted to find out what the plans are for improving that piece of the equation.
That certainly became a hot button issue during this storm because there for so many homes that had significant meter base or weatherhead damage. To assist with that, we did some videos and posted those to the website just to be able to show customers, hey, this is what this equipment looks like. And if it's damaged or ripped off of your home, you need to have an electrician come assist you with it. So I think we can continue those ongoing efforts. The videos on our website tend to get a lot of views. So I think we'll probably move that from the storm website to a normal place on the website to make it easier for people to get that information.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
All right, thank you, Vice Chair. We have Councilmember Sora, then Councilmember Porterfield, then Councilmember Ellis. Councilmember Sora, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chair. The good thing about going so last is that you've all cut my 100 questions down to 50, so.
Oh, great.
No, I'll be quick. Just, I ask your indulgence because I have to keep scratching and changing, and so I'm going to keep looking through my notes. But I wanted to start from where Councilmember Ewing ended, which was with the prioritization list. I remember one of the speakers that spoke tonight had a daughter that went through that, and if you having a list and that list is not working or it's not doing what it's supposed to do, I think that's a very big failure. So as you're looking at it in terms of improving and all of that, I think making sure that the prioritization of the prioritization list is something that is being considered. So I broke down what I wanted to talk about to the areas that most people have talked about, which is the crews and then the customer. NES. And so on the crew side, how do you choose your emergency workers in a situation like this? Emergency contractors.
Yeah, so we have both our resources, our linemen and some of our electrician personnel, and then we also have contractors who do line work on our system every year, every day. So we start with those because they are relationships that maybe already know how to operate on our system and can quickly get to work in an event like this as well. They have resources that are on other systems that can more quickly join our workforce.
I remember during one of the briefings earlier on, and we keep talking about, especially when there was allegations that crew members, line workers were being turned away. One of the things that the CEO, Mr. Essa, said was that it takes some time to find people to train to know your system and to bring them online and all of that. That's why some of it was a little slow. Is there a plan on making sure that we identify line workers or contract workers or middlemen that knows our system, that we have them set up before something like this happens?
Yes, in this event, we have trained up even more people than we ever had before. So some of those work groups that normally weren't needed in an event, in a large event, we've added more of those NES resources to do that. Also, some of our contractors who came on system, we've trained them up as well. So now we have a list of resources who responded to this event, who we will keep those contracts available. We will also ensure that every year that we keep those people trained up that are in those different areas. So we are committed. This was a storm that stretched those normal needs and those extreme storms we've had before. We now have a new extreme that we are prepared for. We will not relax on those trainings and making sure that we are ready again. One more thing we did in this event was we shortened the normal training. It is a normally very robust training. We did not want to slip on any safety. Changing safety in the middle of an event like this is very dangerous. The team got together and found a way to abbreviate the training in a way that we could onboard people more quickly. So that is something that we will also do in emergency situations if needed. In our normal course, we will stick to our long training and make sure that we do that.
Thank you. I think it's important to have a pool that you can activate as soon as possible. And I think the training, because that was the reason that I heard, I think we need to do that to mitigate that. The other question that I have for you is with regards to the audit itself. The report shows that there's an internal audit that shows things that could have done or should be done to avoid situations like this, and that audit was not acted on for months. What was the failure in that instance, and what are we doing to mitigate that?
I'm not familiar with.
It's with vegetation.
Oh,
mostly.
yes. Yeah, I thought maybe you were referring to the vegetation management. So that wasn't an audit per se. It was our enterprise risk management report that's done on an annual basis that evaluates all risks for the organization. And in that case, it flagged tree trimming is a risk for any utility that has above ground lines. And so At that point, I believe NES had been behind on tree trimming the prior 2 years. And what I mean by behind is we had not trimmed the amount of miles that we had planned and budgeted. One of those years was due to a vendor change. The program was retooled in 2024, and they didn't trim the 1,200 miles that we target because they had the change of vendor. Then in 2025, a lot of the tree trimming vendors took off to Northeast Tennessee and Western North Carolina to assist with the crisis created by Hurricane Helene. So in that year, the trimming was below the 1,200 goal. But the comment that our board member made in November when we presented that, when that ERM report was presented, is that we were ahead of budget. I mean, not ahead of budget, we were ahead of our trimming goals for 2026. And so we've continued to be on track with trimming in fiscal year 2026. But it had been noted that we had been behind on tree trimming for some of those prior years.
So again, we're not going to go back to blaming, but I view all of this as performance improvements and making notes. And so if we have an internal report or internal audit or assessment, and the report of it is before us and there's a storm coming, how does that get elevated to where those risk assessment, that's the point of the risk assessment, is taken into consideration as we're making plans for things that are about to happen?
Anytime there's an audit, we take it very seriously. I'm a former external and internal auditor myself, so if I get an audit report with something on it, we're going to act on it. And so we have taken steps to ensure that program, the tree trimming program, is trimming the number of miles that we need it to. And I will tell you that tree trimming is essential in maintenance because we trim, kind of standard is to maintain 10 to 15 feet of clearance away from trees away from your lines to avoid limbs falling on the lines and try to minimize tree damage. I will say with an event like what we just had, where you see trees that have essentially exploded because of the ice, they kind of split open, almost look like a tulip or something. And then you have whole trees just falling on the lines. Unfortunately, our tree trimming program can't really mitigate that level of tree damage. The ice is just so devastating that certainly tree trimming helps with that, but you can't tree trim to mitigate whole trees falling on lines.
Thank you. I used to be an auditor too, and I think as we're talking about review and performances, we want to make sure that we're taking the reports into action because everybody's asking for commission and all of this, but it's all useless if there's a report that has not been acted upon. So I appreciate the clarification that even if you've done it, I wish some of it has been done, so we didn't have the catastrophe that we have, but that the ice of this case would that wouldn't have helped it, so that's good. On the communication side, thank you so much. I think a lot has been said about how we're going to improve the information that goes out. But the part that I wanted to lift up is what comes in. I think part of the frustration for a lot of people was that they were not able to get through to NES. I know that it was a storm and everybody was out trying to fix what is out there. But do we have plans for, just as we're bringing in line workers to deal with restoration and things like that, do we have plans to bring in more people to deal with the communication so that when people do call, they have somebody to talk to? So instead of directing it to all of us and then we have two people to talk to. And so what is the plan to make sure that the complaint from customers, to reduce that frustration from customers, will be part of the plan?
So we will continue to evaluate, expand. We have 2 overflow call centers already that are scalable, so we did lean on those resources. We have an overflow center that takes the call as well to report the outage. All of those were maxed very early in the storm. In the last 2 weeks, we took as many calls as we did over the last 6 months. So there is a scalability that we have to look into, and there's a reality to when we look into these, what can we accomplish? The 2 overflow call centers is fairly large for a utility our size to have that ability to scale, but we will evaluate how much more do we need to scale.
And I think that what I will talk about is that just as we're doing with the crew and we're having a pool, I don't want to bring in employees or staff that are not doing anything, but I think part of scaling and planning is to be able to say, if it is this many, this is what we need. If it goes to this many, we need to bring in more people for that so people are not frustrated.
That's right.
And then also on communication, the responses which you're building now, I mean, the outward response, I think part of the frustration was that it was a generic. It was either you have it, you don't have it. Does the response system have the capability to have tiered responses, wherein you have a set of people? Because on our calls, what I kept hearing was that we're working on a cruise outside, and I see the cruise working, right? And so there are people that are being worked on, about to be worked on. There are people that don't have cruise assigned. Does your communication system have or what you can build the capacity to be able to have a tiered messaging system or a detailed messaging system that goes out to folks?
Yeah, so I think what's been really good about this conversation is we all have a mutual interest in making this better. And I think we're going to have to work together in conversations to figure out just what matters and what makes sense to your constituents and our customers. As we get in an event like this, we can provide more detailed information. As we mentioned, also the challenge of getting an assessment to know what that detail really is in something this large. So we are committed to improving it. I think these conversations we're having and that we will continue to have is going to be what will help us deliver the right message. That is going to be the partnership that makes a difference, is what matters to customers in these events when less information is available early on.
Thank you. My next question will be for OEM, but I also want to say this to you and all the other departments and everybody. We got a lot of information from everyone, the administration, NDOT, everybody sent a lot of information, but my request to everyone, including NES, other than language, is also how do you condense that information to where it's easy for us to put out? I think a lot of us I put stuff with pictures, but we get a lot of written stuff. A lot of us are having to read through. I put out something, he puts out something else based on what he thinks is important. So maybe having information where it will be condensed, big ones, and then condensed for everybody. I'm asking all the departments to think about that. But Chief Swan, I want to say thank you. I think everybody said a lot of thanks to the line workers, to your departments, police, and all the metro services for all the great work that you've done. I want to, on record, thank Assistant Chief Jordan for pulling me out of my house because I couldn't get out, and I was out of power like everybody else for a long time. So thank you for the work that you do. Question that I have for you is, and I asked that night, do we have, somebody may have asked about generators or battery-powered heaters? There are people that may not want to leave their home that I wouldn't have left mine, let me put it like that, if I have something warm, but I did not, and nobody has anything. Do we think about that so that at least for something like this, there's a way to, because some people want to come to the shelter, but they cannot leave their driveway, right? So do we have things like that to help individuals, or is that a safety risk or something that you would rather not do?
Well, thank you for the question. One of our biggest concerns, as you know, during this storm was carbon monoxide exposure or poison. So once we did inquire and got generators, our major concern was that we didn't just put them out without putting other safety measures around them. As I mentioned earlier, we made sure that people had carbon monoxide detectors, along with information just for safety purposes. And we tried to message during our briefings that there's so many different ways, methods that people were using to warm their house, and the danger of that, of course, when you talk about carbon monoxide, is can't smell it, taste it, but it's odorless, but it can kill you. So once we determined that we did have generators, we made sure that we put things in place that once we received them and gave them through the VOAD, we gave them to individuals that needed them, that they had at least all the information they could to make it as safe as possible. Then you got to take in consideration, are you putting a generator in a place that by the code is a violation, like an apartment complex, or so that is a caveat that's very difficult for us. That's why we wanted to make sure that we instantly stood up shelters. we were able to provide a place for people to go to get out of the code, warming centers and shelters. So again, for us, it's always going to be life safety. And I want to mention that even though these, during this episode of the storm, emergency services kept running. Unfortunately, life doesn't stop for us just because we have one event. So we were able to make all of our emergency calls, 911, when the call came through, our guys were able to respond to those, both from emergency field aspect all the way around. So my response to that is being when we give out any type of information, especially from a government standpoint, and for me as the chief of the Nashville Fire Department and Office of Emergency Management, it's paramount that we not just give out stuff without giving out all the information to make people safe. So again, once we got the generators and for places that would receive a generator in a safe manner, that's what we did. We extended that and gave it to them. So.
Thank you. And I think that giving out generator is a new thing. This time, is this your first time of doing that?
Yes, that was, again, we got generators from our Tractor Supply, and also we had generators given to us by TEMA, by the state. They actually came as well and gave generators to us. So we were able to, again, use the VOAD, which grassroots organizations and nonprofits that already had the heartbeat of the communities. So they already knew the process or knew individuals that were in need. So we used them to process those generators out, and it took the pressure off of us, and they had a better knowing of people in the community that needed them.
I appreciate that, Chief, since it's our first time, because when I first asked, we didn't have it. So I'll appreciate that as we're looking forward to if we have storms in the future. Part of the information now is letting people know there could be generators and what are the risks and how do people qualify and where do they go to get one, so that I would rather, like I said, the people that will stay in their home and keep the emergency vehicles for people that really need to get out. And so that's part of what we're talking about, and so thank you for doing that. My next set of questions will be for the administration, and I'm going to make it quick.
And if we could make it quick, because we do still have
very
11
quick,
people in
almost
this
done.
queue.
About to, in fact, I was going to do end up, but I skipped them, and so see, I'm already changing it.
We've gone from 47
The administration, I'll make it one quick question. The funding that we're getting, the NES had $1 million. Do they set the criteria for that, or that's part of the criteria with the Nashville response? And then with the Nashville response, with all the money that is coming in, one of the things that I've heard is the bottlenecks that is happening where people are not able to get funds as they need it, or the criteria that are being set up to where some people are not even qualified, even though they need it. So are we walking through all of that? Because I have people that said, I called the number, they said I don't qualify, I went to Mark said they can't give it to me. This is a very serious point, and we have all this money. How do we get it to people, and do we get it to them really fast?
Councilmember, with regard to the response fund, that's United Way that's making the disbursement determinations. With respect to the housing assistance with MAC, the request for assistance has to be storm-related, and that's the criteria that's being used.
All right. Thank you. Before I sit down, I think it's very important. I know that we thank a lot of people, but the people that I want to thank for me also is the people of Nashville. I think Nashville rose up. People opened their homes, let their neighbors in, and people gave food and did a lot of things. I think the resiliences of this community is what thanking. Somebody was talking to me the other day. We didn't have break-ins, even though people lost power. So I think I want to thank the people of Nashville for their part in helping us see this through. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councilmember Porterfield, then Councilmember Ellis, then Councilmember Evans.
Thank you so very much, Chair. My first question is for NES. I only have a few, and I'll be super brief. So if NES followed by NDOT, followed by OEM wants to line up. My first question for NES is, how long does it take to onboard new crews? What is the normal time, and then what is the abbreviated time? And brevity is our friend.
Onboarding crews isn't necessarily what the bottleneck was. It was more having someone that had gone through, hazardous energy control training. So crews will show up and we have to pair them with someone on the NES team, an engineer, someone from meter. Anyone we've put through hazardous energy control, we were pairing with contract crews, because what that is it's training that teaches them the different voltages we have on our system, how to communicate with our system control team, and do proper clearances. And so we deployed engineers and everyone else out to do those jobs. As we were onboarding more contractors, we didn't have enough of those people. And so we started dividing up crews that of our own that may have someone on them that had the hazardous energy control training to have them lead contract crews. But then we also they developed an expedited training for people that could take crews out into the field. It's typically a 40-hour training, and I think they packed it into 8 hours, right? Oh, 4 hours. They packed it into 4 hours so they could get other contract engineers and others on our system to be able to lead crews, and that's how they were able to ramp up to a high volume of crews.
Okay, thank you for that question. And this follow-up is for NES. I heard yesterday that there was some type of incident where one of the trucks may have had flipped over, had some damage because of the ice. What is the process or procedure for the vehicles that you all use to be weatherized so that we can make sure that we are keeping people driving those vehicles safe? And that same question will be for NDOT, NES, NDOT, and OEM. In essence, I'm asking, what are we doing for our vehicles to make sure that they can get out? Because if it's a sheet of ice, but a truck has to get out to remove trees or do whatever in order to get the electricity back up, how are we making sure that we can get those vehicles out as quickly and safely as possible?
Certainly, we have a fleet team that's equipped with chains and other equipment that they put on the trucks to help them navigate the snow and ice. In this particular situation, it was a passenger vehicle. It was a pickup truck that was sitting on ice. And, the last few days, you've had a lot of it melt and then refreeze, and you have certain spots around our service territory that were icy. He was sitting on one of those icy spots. They noticed his vehicle was sliding, and fortunately, he was able to get out of it safely before it did slide off. But yes, we do equip our vehicles with chains and other things they need. It's difficult when all the snow and ice is melted off the roads, but then you have patches where our people have to drive their vehicles.
Thank you. And that, please.
We also have our vehicles equipped with chains, and we also buy a lot of four-wheel drive vehicles. Not that they're ideal or they're the answer to ice, but they do help navigate a lot of those issues. And we also have purchased and used a simulator that we're able to train our drivers and operators to be able to utilize. And, because the only training you actually get for these type of events, especially when it comes to ice on the road, a lot of these drivers, the only way you're going to get it is in the seat in an event. So the simulator we purchased has really helped us train our employees to be able to drive and react on snow and ice.
Thank you so much. I hope you share that simulator with other departments. And Chief Swan, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to follow suit exactly in the same manner we do. We start out by heavily messaging our departments about the upcoming weather event. We have chains that go on our vehicles. And also, we message this to the city that we want to try to have people that should be on the roadway to be off the roadway unless they have to, just because when an emergency happens, we still have to make that call. So again, our drivers, our engineers are very well aware of the weather, knowing how to use the chains, make sure that they're activated, and still respond, but just use common sense, slow it down, because again, even though you have an emergency, getting there is the most important thing.
Thank you. And my final question is also for Chief Swan. How do you all predict the weather events? I know it was initially looking like it was going to go one way and then it kind of changed over. Do y'all have a in-house person that is doing those predictions and have changes at the federal level from the National Weather Service and NOAA. Have any federal changes had an impact on you all's ability to do weather predictions?
Well, thank you. Well, we use the National Weather Service, and I know everyone in here gets my weather briefing when we put it out. Again, I only do that when we have inclement weather. So we lean heavy on them to give us guidance, and this storm was no particularly different than any other. We knew that we were going to get either snow or ice, so we sort of tried to prepare for both of those. But NES is a strong partner of ours, and we are very appreciative of them being able to give us the information at any moment. We do weather briefings. If the weather's going to be inclement, we'll have something like a 1 o'clock briefing or a 10 o'clock briefing, but they're constantly in communication with us. So that's who we use, the National Weather Service.
Thank you. Did any federal changes impact you all's ability to be able to make accurate predictions?
No, absolutely not. We at the beginning of I know there was a little hiccup at the beginning of the year where there was a lot of moving in the government, and what we noticed with our National Weather Service, just very little changes. But again, the coordination there is strong, and we try to make sure that we stay in close communications with them. So again, we're very pleased with the information and how we communicate with each other.
Thank you. And my last name, Madam Chair, just lifting up really quickly, appreciate the work that everybody did. I second what we heard from Councilmember Soror. If we can get more user-friendly comms, we got a lot of very dense information, super helpful, but if we could just get that in a way that's a little more user-friendly, if we could prepare, I know there were a lot of like door-to-door operations in which some council members were out knocking on doors, community partners were going out, MDHA and other entities. If we could make a plan to be able to launch some of those things a little bit sooner, I know it has to be safe to get those volunteers and community members out there. But if we could make a plan to do it a little bit sooner, looking at the mutual aid, not the NES mutual aid, but what we as a community would call mutual aid, getting out like food and generators and things like that. If we could look at how we can partner with some of those organizations on the ground. We heard this week, many of us already knew this, but organizations like the Remix, Stand Up Nashville, Equity Alliance, Turk, and many others, I don't want to leave anybody out, but a lot of those organizations were on the ground giving mutual aid. So if we as a city can figure out how to maybe mobilize those organizations and work with them a little bit sooner, or work with them to help get aid out to our residents and to help with the door knocking, that would be great. And then lastly, if we could really prioritize the language access to make sure that the information that we're sharing, all of our residents are able to get it. Thank you, Chair.
I don't know how you had all that written on that tiny little Post-it note. Y'all, she's got a Post-it note that's the smallest size, and she had all that written on it. Council Member Ellis, then Evans, then Bradford. Council Member Ellis, you are recognized.
Thank you, and if you all forgive my seat, I don't want to twist and turn my body like that. It's late in the evening. So I'm going to limit myself to 2 questions because I am very anxious to see the report that comes back from the independent committee. So the first question is for NES. In your opening statement, you alluded to a reimbursement resolution. What does that mean?
We will be issuing bonds later this year for new construction. So each time we come, we issue new money bonds, we come to the council for approval of those bonds. And that's to fund our capital improvement needs for the next 3 years. To be able to issue a larger bond, we will have spent probably $140 million on this storm by the time we're done, which will deplete a lot of our cash reserves. To be able to replenish that and not have to do it through by raising rates, we would prefer to leverage a debt instrument to bridge the gap to when we can get FEMA reimbursement. So we will likely in the fall issue a larger bond issuance that will give us some ability to replenish our cash. But to be able to do that, we have to do something sooner than the bond issuance. We have to come to this body, since you will ultimately approve the bond issuance, we have to come to this body and get approval to be able to do that in advance. So that's supposed to be 60 days from the start of the storm. So it's a reimbursement resolution that would essentially allow us to take bond issuance borrowings funded by electric revenues to replenish what we've expended on the storm.
Got it. And just to follow up to that, and who would be able to purchase the debt bonds?
When we issue them, they're available for anyone to purchase.
Okay, cool. All right, next thing, last question rather. So, and you may have spoken to that in your answer, but will you all be increasing rates to cover the cost of the storm repair?
This debt leveraging is our effort to not increase rates sooner than we had budgeted. And the budget we took to our board in May, we anticipated a rate adjustment in fiscal 2028, which I believe would be October of 2027, to avoid having to do that sooner, just to fill that gap, the expenditure gap, before we can be reimbursed by FEMA. We intend to leverage some debt instruments. And we're looking at other things besides just the tax exempt bonds. We may do a commercial paper program, but just anything to keep from having to increase rates on our customers.
So I'm sorry, that went a little over my head. So in October of 2027, will you be increasing rates then?
That is what we had projected when we took our budget to the board in May, but we will true up our budget and go to the board again in this coming May for budget approval. So that's just part of our 5-year model. That's not a solid date for a rate adjustment.
Got it. Okay, just one clarifying question then. So of the 140 million, 110, 140 that you all referenced, how much of that is actual, would you estimate, is damage to the physical grid?
The majority of those costs, honestly, will be labor. It will be contract linemen that were here, our linemen and contract linemen that were here to restore power. We had a lot of transformers out, poles, tons of poles broken, but poles aren't terribly expensive, but the manpower to replace them is, because on average, it takes 8 to 10 hours to replace a broken pole. And so that's a lot of manpower put into replacing one pole, and we had about 800 poles broken across our service territory through this storm. So the majority of that cost will be labor.
Those are all the questions I have.
Thank you, Councilmember Ellis, Councilmember Evans Bradford, and then Weiner are in the queue.
Councilmember Evans, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I guess the first question I have is for you and the other chair who's left the room. Was the NES board invited to today's meeting?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And then my follow-up question, I've got 2 for NES. Based on the knowledge that the board was invited, I guess one question that I have on trying to communicate with the board is their email address that's listed on the website, is it operational?
Those email addresses are operational.
Okay, so then basically they probably received emails, but then they just didn't reply necessarily is what I should anticipate.
Well, we have, as you're aware, we have 5 board members. Several of them were traveling this week, and we had our special call board meeting yesterday just to cram it in at the beginning of the week because most of them were traveling the remainder of the week. So I know we've had at least 1 board member here tonight. I see a second one. So the 2 that are in town are present. Well, one of them had to leave a moment ago, but 2 of them are in town and attended.
Okay, great. I appreciate pointing that out because I think there was some times that I know I was looking for some support from the board when everything was happening and didn't get any response. And so that led me to believe that maybe their emails were not working or, that there were other things that they were focused on or they thought it was the chair's priority or responsibility maybe to communicate with us. And so just was looking for clarification, so I appreciate that.
Let me further clarify. Most of those those emails go to the communications team at NES to disperse to the board members. So I would say that's not the board member. If they did not respond, that's not on the board members. That's probably because our communications team is overwhelmed.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I appreciate it. And I guess kind of going back to some of the themes about vulnerable populations and prioritization and those kinds of things, I guess one question that I have that came up is around prioritization for vulnerable low-income families based on census tract data. And have you all ever looked at Metro Social Services census tract data and the reporting that they publish to really identify like what parts of town will have the most long-term impact from, catastrophes like this that we'll see kind of cascading as part of like, the donation that you all made and that kind of thing. Those are the folks that are going to end up being helped by all those donations. And so is there opportunity for you to consider looking at those populations in addition to the high number of outages and trying to get the most bang for your buck?
We can certainly take a look at whether we can incorporate social impacts to our prioritization. I will say it does get complicated as you're trying to prioritize and get the most customers restored. So I think that's why it's historically been a focus on people who medically need to be prioritized.
I understand, especially since you're judged based on how rapidly you are depleting the number of people and restoring the power. So I totally understand that, but it was just something that came up, so I appreciate that. And then I think my other questions are for OEM, so for Director Chief Swan. Thank you. So I got trained, I went through the Red Cross training, so that way I could be a shelter worker. So I spent time volunteering at the fairground shelter. And so one of the things, I guess, first of all, Metro Social Services, Health Department, Meharry, all the healthcare workers that were there were amazing. All the staff members from your team, DCSO, everybody that was there, I got to see them in action on the other side, which was really helpful. But to give you, I guess, some food for thought, like one of the issues that I experienced on the Red Cross side is that the Red Cross teams were advised, likely by their own leadership, like don't talk about the specifics around power outages with people because of the uncertainty related to were the systems accurate in saying their power is back on, those kinds of things, because they were concerned about people's mental health and that level of uncertainty. And so like being a Metro person and having the ability to just do duties as assigned by the Red Cross, I found myself doing a lot of those things, answering questions and being able to then like texting, council members and going, hey, this person lives here. Do you know for a fact that the person's power is on? Those kinds of things. And so I would say I maybe put a pin in the idea of, in addition to like staffing, with all the teams that are actually supporting the shelter operations, that there's somebody like in a power outage or, if we had a water issue, whatever, if there's somebody that can just be a question answerer that's specific from Metro, I think that would really go a long way for people that, are in the shelter. So I wanted to mention that. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention, I guess on the closure process, at the time I was there, which was the weekend before the fairground shelter closed, there was lots of rumors circulating, like, we understand the shelter is closing on Tuesday. Is that true? And so I went to the shelter manager and asked, how do you guys close your shelters? They explained the process about notification, those kinds of things. And so I guess at that point, I don't think you all had a plan to, we're going to close on Tuesday, but it ended up coming to fruition. And my understanding is that we didn't do it in like the Red Cross ideal way to close. And so can you speak to how we did it versus the Red Cross, like best practices?
Yeah, thank you for that. First, we had a National Red Cross here, and when they run shelters, they weren't familiar with how we do things local. Some good things that came about, they were very impressed that we had so many wraparound services. They just wasn't accustomed to that. When we had Office of Homeless Services, Department of Social Services, along with our fire and EMS personnel, as you mentioned, the Department of Health, We actually used our Vanderbilt Life Flight EMS and Ascension St. Thomas EMS, so they had so many wraparound services. And their rules for the shelters are a little bit more different than our rules. So when we first started to close down the shelter that you're referring to, the little confusion was that they wanted to process everyone individually to give them the resources they needed and to make sure that they had a place to go. But redundancy in that process because homeless, the Office of Homelessness and again, social services, they knew the clients, most of them by name. So the first closing was a little rough, but we got it worked out. And that evening, we had a 6 p.m. meeting, and what we came to the conclusion is that we would have the Red Cross work with the individuals who had a residence to go back to, and we will allow our unhoused population to be dealt with by our systems that we already got in place. And from that point, it was just flawless because, again, look, April and her team and Renee and her team was just amazing. Again, after speaking with them, they literally would go into the shelters and call them by name. So once we got together on the system that worked best, it made it work a lot easier. But we had to learn each other because, again, it was National Red Cross that came in, and their rules were just definitely, I understood them, but it was a little slower than what we were looking at processing. And it didn't take but just one episode of trying to streamline that. And then Mike and his team was just amazing to work with. So again, I appreciate that question. And we've actually started that conversation about how to better work in those circumstances where the language is the same but different. But again, we concluded with we will allow the unhoused population to work with those who are already familiar with them and have a process. And it made it work quicker because we wanted to get people to the right place to get the right type of help and aid. And then with our Red Cross, they were able to just work with individuals who had residents to go back to and give them all the wraparound services that they needed. So thank you.
Thank you. And I guess, and you brought up two things I wanted to, you reminded me of two things. Rules disparity. There definitely is rules disparity between like donations that, Metro would accept versus the Red Cross. And I found some conflict in those, in particular with organizations that wanted to come to the door, make a donation, and how they have to get it approved. It has to be vetted, all that documented, all that stuff. And we have a little more flexibility in how we accept things. And so there may be some discussion around that for the future if Red Cross is going to be involved. And then the other thing, the last thing I wanted to mention is the families at the shelter, because to your point, the open nature of the shelter was very important so people would live through the storm. And it also, I think, created some conflict and challenges kind of within the different constituents that were being served in the shelter. And in particular, if there's opportunity at the fairgrounds, if we ever have to use the fairgrounds again, to segment like families with children in a different way, whatever that looks like. I know I was there when they were moving pet populations around and those kinds of things. I think it would be helpful. It was also it wasn't a very child-friendly environment. And there needs to be, I think, some thought around how are we separately serving kind of families with kids, and communication didn't get to them. The soccer stadium having the event that they had that weekend, nobody in the shelter really knew about it, including the kids that probably would have benefited the most from being able to go over there. So just a lot of ideas, and of course I'm happy to email them all to you because it was really eye-opening. And I think it's one of those things we all should be thoughtful about, because this is not the worst case scenario for our city. Worst case scenario would be we're all leading our own disaster response within our own council district. And so thinking about how would we respond as individuals that way, I think would be helpful too.
Yeah, we appreciate that. And we're definitely open for suggestions. And again, these opportunities for us, it makes us just better when we have to have those if it ever happens again. So we're definitely open for that, and we appreciate it.
All right, thank you. And just a reminder, please address the chair unless you just want the corner of your nose and your backside on the TV screen. It is Councilmember Bradford, then Councilmember Weiner, then Councilmember Toombs.
Thank you, Chair. So before I get my questions going, I'll just go ahead and give a heads up. I'll be asking for information from NES, OEM, codes, and potentially NDOT. So the first question I have, and this kind of came to me as I was, watching the news, driving around the city, seeing some of the damage. Under codes, are there any restrictions, or do we have anything in the codes specifying species of trees that are allowed to be planted, where they can be planted, or any prohibitions on planting trees of a certain height or species in proximity to power lines? The second part of that question, it could either be codes and or NES, is have we collected data from this event on the species of trees that were that failed the most?
Yep. I think though it seems like it would be a codes question, my understanding of the tree question is actually that NES has guidelines on those trees. So if it's okay with you, Councilmember Bradford, I'll let NES respond to that.
We do have trees that a bank of trees that we suggest people plant that are power line friendly. There are no codes that would forbid people from planting trees that are not power line friendly underneath them. So there's nothing in place currently. And with regard to trees that are more prone to breaking, I know I don't have the data yet on which ones we cut the most, but I can promise a lot of them were hackberries.
I'd just be curious, because I know NDOT did a lot of, picking up of trees. So I'd like to see like what data we have. That way it can kind of go, if we do decide we want to do legislation and codes, we know what trees we need to prohibit so that we don't have issues like this in the future. Does codes have anything they want to add?
Yeah, so that's what I was going to say. Do codes or water have anything that they want to add, just sort of mindful of water's role in the tree canopy?
We're doing a significant assessment of that. That's forthcoming.
All right. I look forward to seeing that. Another question / feedback. Speaking with folks from other cities who experience this type of weather more often, they mentioned that it's not just their street crews that are out plowing the streets, but that they also have snow plows installed on their waste vehicles to help implement, scale up the fleet for these situations. Do we have anybody from Waste that could answer if there are plans in place to start purchasing snow plows to attach to our trash trucks?
I see somebody from NDOT who'd like to help.
I don't want to speak on their behalf, but no, for multiple reasons. In this environment, at least over the last 30 plus years, it's not been to the point that it would have benefited the city, because it's not just a snowing application, it's actually a salting application. And then we can look at, I've talked to this body before about, we can add additional mileage, we can add additional trucks. We just have to look at storage capabilities and how much investments you want to make in that type of removal.
I think too, it's, the benefit would not be the pre-treatment, but when you have miles and miles of neighborhood roads that are always at the bottom of the list because of your primary and secondaries, if you've got trash trucks basically running their routes, that should help take a lot of pressure off of NDOT from getting into the neighborhood streets. Just some food for thought there. There's been a lot of talk about generators, families in need, medical situations. I'm going to ask that we look at whether it's using federal funds to purchase generators to give out, or if there's programs that provide generators, working with NES and this database of at-risk households to go ahead and, be proactive and give them generators before the next event happens. That way, if something like this happens again, they're not having to wait for vegetation to be cleared. They're not having to wait for power to be restored. They can automatically be on generator power until power is restored. That's just a thought, a suggestion for us as a city and for our partners to kind of look at for the future with generators. And the last thing I'm going to ask, so I want to commend OEM and all those involved, the shelters, for how quickly they got them online. The one critique, feedback I have is it would have been nice for, like, if we were planning for the storm since Tuesday the week before. I think maybe going forward, it would have be better to have that information before the storm actually hits instead of hours after the need arises. So a question to OEM is that something going forward, would y'all be able to commit to being more proactive and, before the storm hits, letting folks know, hey, if you lose power for any reason, here are the places you can go starting, at this time.
Well, it would be, first of all, we're definitely open to when it comes to public messaging. That's something that we always try to do. It is difficult to predict, exactly what time a shelter would open because, again, we open those shelters on demand as far as what we pre-see happening, taking into consideration the ice storm coming in that morning. Sunday, and by 1 o'clock, we did have it established. And listen, I take that as collaboration between a lot of the offices to get that to happen. But can we do it better? I want to do everything we can do to make sure that we provide the service that we are expected to our citizens. So that will be something that we can look at definitely moving forward. It's just that we're driven by the emergency, but if we could add a crystal ball and knew that was going to happen, then that shelter would have been in place Saturday evening, and we wouldn't have waited till Sunday when the storm actually hit, the ice hit. So we're open to suggestions like that for all council members. We're open and willing to take those in and really be able to have a Q&A with you to make that work a little better. And I will want to mention as well, I think what would be really helpful for us, the Office of Emergency Management, and we have to try to set up some sessions for our Metro Council so you can come into the EOC and you can see how things actually happen, how it transpire, and how the ball gets rolling with every incident. And I think it gives a better understanding because, again, you guys have been amazing partners of ours. You've been very supportive, and we want to make sure that we're listening to what you're saying and suggestions, and then also being able to articulate cause and effect. So we're open to any and all suggestions, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Bradford. I was told I should make a Bradford peer joke, but honestly, I like you and I don't like them, and so it's very difficult for me to make that comparison. But I hope that all
the two Bradford mayors in my neighborhood survived the storm, not a scratch.
I hate to hear that. Councilmember Wiener, then Toombs, then Councilmember Abel. It's like the lottery. Your name comes up. Okay, Councilmember Wiener, you were recognized.
That's better. I have voice. Thank you, chairs. I appreciate it. And I have 2 words for our employees. You are selfless heroes to everybody in the city, and that includes first responders. It doesn't matter, anybody that picked up a finger and did anything. You were doing it out of love for the city and for your neighbors, and that was incredible. Yes, I have 6 pages of questions. I will not bore you with all 6 pages, Councilmember Ewing.
You got some heads that looked up
I know,
real quick in the back.
right? You want 6 pages? I'll give you 6 pages. You're going to get them anyway. So what I'd like to share is that these questions cover workforce, mutual aid, preparedness, communications, vulnerable people, grid readiness, infrastructure, data accuracy, outage reporting, risk management, risk reduction, financial readiness. There's a whole list. And what I'd like to offer is, I know there are council members in here who did not get all their questions asked, and I am happy to add them to my 6 pages and provide
through the council office, of course.
Through the council office, and sort them by who which department they go to and what the topic is, and let the council office send them to the different departments. And then if those questions can then be sent back to us so that we have an opportunity to vet those. I also think it'll help with this preparedness group that we're putting together to make sure that we have a plan. And I want to give a shout out to Chief Swan. I have a really good friend, and she is on dialysis 9.5 hours a day. She's fragile. And she called me panic-stricken because had she not gotten her dialysis in 4 hours from when we were talking, she could have died. And I called Chief Swan and I said, I need help. I need help. I need somebody that can get her because I couldn't navigate the roads to get her back over to my house, and I had a generator. So it was her only option because she had no power. And he dropped everything he was doing. And within 2 hours, somebody from the fire department had her at my house with her dialysis machine, all of her equipment, her husband, and everything. And so she was with me for 8 days. And that's what made me start thinking about my deaf patients, my deaf constituents, my visually impaired constituents. God forbid we don't put them at the top of the list. We've got the disability community. We've got medically fragile folks. And I don't frankly want to hear that we will consider how we engage those folks. That's not good enough. I'm sorry, it's just not good enough. And I expect to see better. So that's my soliloquy. I'm going to ask just a couple of my questions, then I will sit down and be quiet. This is for NES. Can you assure me that the review contractor vendor that the board selects will not have any conflicts? No current work for NES, no relationship with you or Brent, none. Independent means independent. The board should know that this body demands independence.
I can assure you they are not selecting a vendor that has any current association with NES.
Thank you. Okay, next question. I do want to add quickly, though, that the critical care, the PSA, would be helpful. Maybe partnering with the mayor's office and our text message and telephone messaging system might have been something that NES could have considered. Let's see, I had one more question. Okay, EMAP. Do y'all know what EMAP is?
Pardon?
EMAP. EMAP. Accreditation group. Brown, do you know what it is? Okay.
We are part of the NERC portion of, so a little bit different, but as we're working with Accenture after the storm, we're putting together our plans to match some of that, but a different structure.
Is accreditation commonly dealt with in the utility industry across the country? In other words, maybe what percentage of the folks in the industry are accredited?
I'll investigate that. We are through this, getting some of those best practices from the largest utilities, and so there is more structure in place.
I think, I know I, for one, would appreciate knowing if we should be accredited, and if it's the city that gets accredited, or if it's the utility that gets accredited, and what that looks like, and if it's something that we should consider. So I'd love some feedback on that.
Very good. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm not going to ask my 6 pages of questions. I will pass them off to Rosie.
I really appreciate that. I might have had to cut you off, and then I'd have felt really bad about it.
No more call for you.
We have Councilmember Toombs and Councilmember Gable, and then is Councilmember Eslick still here? Okay, then we'll skip straight to you, Councilmember Webb. After that, Councilmember Toombs, you are recognized.
Thank you, chairs, and thank you to everyone that played a role in bringing power back to all of our constituents. I have 3 questions, and they're all for NES. So the first couple have to do with tree trimming, and first I want to know, is the trimming back of the tree limbs, is that solely an NES responsibility, or is there any responsibility on the part of the property owner?
NES clears within a certain distance of our lines. So we're looking at a 10-foot clearance from our primary lines. Anything outside of that would be the homeowner's decision.
And that's something that, going back to the 1,200 mile goal per year, NES is tracking whose tree is 10 foot, has that 10-foot clearance, and whose doesn't.
Well, as it works now, we have essentially a map of the city that we work as we're trimming. So the goal is to return to every tree within a 4-year period, and they're trimmed to ensure that we maintain a 10-foot clearance. And we do species-specific trimming. So we look at how quickly does this specific species of tree grow to know how far back we need to trim them.
And so, not to beat a dead horse, but if I'm the property owner, I don't have to do anything. NES makes sure that my trees are trimmed where they're supposed to be.
You do have the service line to the home. So from the pole to the home, we don't touch those trees. Those typically sit much further. They're out of the right of way on the owner's property. And so they would be responsible for trees around their service line.
Okay. Did you want to jump in there, Chair?
Yeah, I just want to, but if it's actually touching the line, they should call you, right? They should not just go out there and
Yeah.
chainsaw that off.
Oh, we don't want customers touching anything that's touching a line.
Thank you. Sorry, we saw a bunch of that around town, like on the service line, so I just wanted to clarify.
Thank you for that, Chair. And then going back to the goal, the 1,200 mile per year goal, you mentioned that because of the change of vendor in 2024, you had gotten behind, and then because of Hurricane Helene, diverting resources to that recovery in 2025, you had gotten behind, and that you're ahead of your goal in 2026. So does that mean that NES caught up in 2024 and caught up in 2025, and now you're on track for 2026?
I believe it just means that we are on track for 2026. I don't think the mileage from those prior 2 years has been made up.
So if you didn't catch up in 24, you didn't catch up or meet your goal in 25, wouldn't you still be behind?
On the 4-year trim cycle, yes. Brent can probably speak to trees a little more.
Yeah, so part of the plan is to accelerate and be able to get back on track. So this part of this transition has gotten us to where we have crews that can do that. As we move into the rest of this year and into next year, we will catch back up as well. So you make a great point, and we'll be catching up those miles that were behind.
Okay. And then the last one was regarding live wires and hanging branches that occurred in the aftermath of the storm. Just questioning priority, because I did have some constituents, one in particular that was trapped inside her home because she couldn't get outside because there was a live wire that was wiggling around in her yard, and she called 911 and was just told to don't leave your house because it wasn't safe to do so. And so in terms of priority, like, how do you all prioritize that? Because obviously she's back online now and the wire was removed, but in the midst of it, when you have these wires that are actually on the property and posing an immediate risk of harm to residents, like the wire was sparking, it was setting her lawn on fire. Like, what was your thinking and your strategy in terms of priority for those situations?
Yeah, in those situations, we make those a high priority. A lot of those we go to aren't sparking, and they end up being cable and TV lines, so we disperse crews around the system to do that. We are also focused on restoration of the power. So there was so much damage that while we would visit some of those locations, they wouldn't be sparking wire. Some of them would just be a cable TV or phone line. So we do address, but also a high priority. A majority of our crews are working to restore power. So there is the complexity of this event and when they get to those.
So in that situation, should the process have been when the call to 911 was made that someone should have gone out to assess? Because no one came out for days for this particular constituent.
We'll get that specific information. I know we were dispatching to get a lot of those, but when we get through some of these, getting to those specific locations, we don't have a report on everyone. So get that information from you on the location.
Because I would be interested in better understanding that particular situation than just overall, because she didn't even have the option to go to a warmer location because she couldn't leave her house. And so just want to know more about that situation, but then also what is the improvement going forward in terms of having those really those immediate risk of harm situations and how NES will address those. Thank you, chairs.
If I could answer that, I would like to get that information as well, because that procedure, anytime someone calls 911 and for that particular type call, you should get emergency services out there. So if you could get me that information, I'm very curious to what happened. But anytime a call comes in where that constituent was told to stay in the house and they couldn't leave because of fear, then the proper procedure, we would have responded to that call and made sure that if it was a live wire, we would identify it and then make sure that we contacted NES to have that expedited out to that scene, and somebody would have stayed there until that would have been taken care of. So if you can give me that, I'm curious myself. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Gamble, then Councilmember Webb, and Councilmember Hill.
Thank you, Chair, and I just want to echo everyone else's sentiment, thanking our Metro employees and all the Metro departments for your preparedness and response to the storm. Also wanted to thank the linemen who worked very hard to restore power, and also want to thank the nonprofit Second Harvest Food Bank and the organizations, Nashville Conventions and Visitor Corp, who provided food, hot meals. I attended, participated in a couple of those food distribution events, and residents, the community was very pleased and happy to be able to take part and get food, address their basic needs during the storm. So I also want to thank all the sponsors for that. I also want to acknowledge the severity of this storm. It is believed that we lost 5 individuals as a result of this winter storm, Fern, and I want to acknowledge them: Betty Doss, Francis Pilkington, Sharon Conyers, Almiquio Martinez Oliveira, and James Mitchell, just to offer our condolences to their families and just recognize the severity of this storm that caused loss of life. I do have 2 questions for NES, and they kind of follow up to Councilmember Toombs' questions. One, about the customer service call center. I know I took over 100 calls, texts, emails, and as I know many of my colleagues did as well, from residents who were not getting a response from NES on things regarding live wires, also wanting to report individual outages to their homes as the power got restored on a larger scale. There were many individuals who had power or lines down at their homes who were trying to report those things and didn't feel like those reports were getting heard because they weren't hearing any response from NES. And so my question to that is, and I appreciate that you all have stated already that you did have your call centers working and that you intend to staff up those call centers. But I guess my question is, do you know the number of calls that you all received at those call centers during the storm? And what was the coordination with 911? Because I too, like Councilmember Toombs, had many residents calling saying that they were reporting live wires to 911 and no one was coming for days. So if you could kind of explain how that coordination went and how you may improve that going forward.
You bet. Yeah, we were roughly 70,000 calls in the last 2 weeks. That's about 6 months worth of calls for our normal operation. We will investigate how to scale up. We had a scale-up plan, which was 2 overflow call centers, plus our existing staff, plus some in-house contractors we use already. So we have a plan for most situations, even most storms, that we would have an escalation plan. This definitely pushed the limits of what had been in our normal operation at every level. So we will explore that. Definitely, our goal is to have a service level that is extremely high, not just on a blue sky day, but on some extreme weather events.
And how was the coordination with 911? When people were calling 911, was NES informed, or how was
Yeah,
that
so,
coordination?
so outside of the call center, we have a lot of relationships with OEMs, so a lot of that conversation is going with probably, 30 or so of our employees that are in engineering roles, key account roles, other departments. And Chief Swan's group knows a lot of our staff, and there's a lot of interconnection. We had people at OEM as well that was working, and so a lot of that information, if it wasn't getting through the call center, we were getting it through those relationships. We also stood up something we'd never done before, which was an outage strike team. That was a group that had the ability to get the knowledge in the system that normally we have to wait to go into the control room to get. We stood that up. It will be something we'll always do in the future now. That team was a team that was very familiar with all of the information. They began to more quickly. It was day 2 and 3 that we stood that up. That's when you did start to see a little bit more of the information come through. Antonio was able to get more information. Some of our other legislative and leaders in the community were able to find that. That was a reaction in the storm, something we will have going forward, and helps remove some of the bottlenecks.
Great, thank you. And my last question, Chair, has to do with the tree trimming, and it's already been stated how you plan to address that. I guess my question, I had a resident who contacted me 3 days before the storm hit, or Thursday, I believe it was, and said she's an elderly woman, lives alone, was concerned that there was a branch hanging over the line to her home. She contacted NES about someone coming out to cut it down. She was told that it was on her property because it was hanging over her driveway. And sure enough, when the storm hit, that branch fell and she was out of power in an additional 8 days when all of her neighbors' power had been restored in 3 days, but then she had to wait to have that line reconnected, and she ended up going to Memphis and staying with family while she waited for that. But I guess my question is, do you have an assistance program for elderly, for people on a fixed income that have branches hanging over wires, NES wires to their home, that you can support and lift up those individuals? Because, this could have been avoided if she, of course, didn't have the income to get somebody on the spot to come cut that limb, knowing that it was probably a potential hazard, which it ended up being. So I guess my question is, do you have an assistance tree trimming program? And if you don't, is that something that you will consider looking at for the future? Thank you, Chair.
We're actually exploring an ability to assist both the service line and the weatherhead. There's a partnership we've started before this storm happened that is almost fully vetted, and so that is something that we will be likely rolling out very soon. We're getting all of the details together. That would be something that would help possibly have some funds available throughout the year for that kind of work. It's also therefore if somebody has something damaged that would be able to help fund their repair and restoration of that situation were it to happen.
Councilmember Webb, then Hill, then Nash. Councilmember Webb, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I didn't think I was ever going to get my turn, but I got it. All right. And I do want to say thank y'all to Mr. Potter, Chief Swan, and NDOT, and Antonio Carroll with NES. They did not let me down. They might let another council person down, but they didn't let me down. And I just want to say thank you. 2 quick questions. The first one is for NES. So y'all gave us the data on the linemen. I would like to know the data on the crews that were cutting the trees. Like in 24 hours, how many crews did you have on the ground? 36, 40, that's the kind of data I want.
I have that in a chart. I was just flipping through to see. We have all that. We were checking everybody from engineer to assessment teams to that. It was up to 387 within, I'm going to say, a couple of days. I need to get that information and get more for you, but yes, we will.
I think that's something that all the council needs to see, because I think that's maybe where the catastrophic ad came in. Okay. We just weren't prepared for that. My last question, I don't know, is somebody with the board, the actual NES board, available to answer a question?
We do have a board member here.
Okay.
I would just say the board was here. They were invited to watch, so it may be that she cannot answer it today, but without the rest of her board here.
Thank you. Okay.
I appreciate her being here.
thank you. We've never met. Nice to meet you. I just wanted to know, as the board member, chair, whatever, what role or responsibility do you think the board shared in this? And on a scale from 1 to 10, how would you rate the performance of handling this storm?
I think as far as the board's responsibility is hiring our CEO. And I think our CEO is doing an excellent job at NES. I think NES overall got power back in 13 days. Are there things that could have been done better? Yes, we think there are, and so does the whole team. And so that is why the board is conducting an independent review. And the review will be of the board, management, everyone on down, and it will be totally independent, and we will provide it to the community and we'll use it to get better.
Thank you, ma'am, for being here. Anything else? Okay. Next in the queue is Councilmember Hill. You are recognized.
I guess I'm playing cleanup, huh? Okay, you can just stand up. This is all for you all. First, I just want to say, thank you to everybody, every single department. I know that not only did everybody do their job, and everybody did their job well, but a lot of people did a lot of jobs that were not your jobs. A lot of people were Uber drivers and picking people up and delivery for stuff. And a lot of people pulled together, and a lot of people just said, I'll stand up and help. So thank you to every single person in Metro, every council member here, every person that volunteered to help. Thank you all. Okay, 2. Linemen. I've been in the utility industry for 40 years, and I know linemen. So I want to clarify a few things that some folks put out, that they saw linemen sitting in the parking lot, doing nothing and sitting sometimes for hours. I know linemen, and a lot of them come down and they use this money to pay off their Christmas, and they drive down and they work their 16 hours until they can't work anymore. As soon as they get timed out, they go sleep in their truck, they eat a can of tuna fish and get back to work. And so just because you see someone standing around doesn't mean that they're actually not working. Once they hit their 16-hour time, they have to come out of their bucket and they have to stop working. Number 2, what makes NES system so unique that we have to train other linemen to work here?
I will let Brent provide additional details if I missed something. But we have a variety of voltages on our system, and we also have incredibly congested poles, just because we have a whole lot of attachments, communication cables, things of that nature. But our voltages are different on our system, and you can go 2 spans of wire and then have a voltage change, which is somewhat unique. And so we have a hazardous energy control process whereby people are trained to communicate with their system control so they can safely work on the system. Is there anything significant?
So there are a lot of complicated systems in our country for sure. When you're in an urban area like this, the amount of circuits that cross over that you can't specifically isolate the only circuit. In a more rural area, you might be able to go down a farm road or down a road and have just that circuit and be able to see the next circuit that crosses over. So in a congested area, you have to be more careful. NES has done a great job over the last 10 years of ensuring increased safety. So I think what we have learned through this is that safety that we have in place is excellent. We don't want to sacrifice that. When we move to responding to something like this, we have learned how to scale up that need for additional resources, but also we're going to explore every piece of our safety protocols to make sure we can do it safely, but also find any more way to speed.
I also know in situations like this, hurricanes, tornadoes, and stuff like that, a lot of linemen will come from a lot of different areas, and some may or may not be fully qualified. Did you turn away any qualified linemen?
So at the leadership level, we were working through all of this and getting crews onboarded. And so we were working through all of those resources that were coming in that we hadn't worked before. A lot of our messages each day were, we are getting 200 more right now. Stay in touch. And each day as we were filling up our resources, that's when we started to reach out to those ones we'd never worked through before. We were going through some of the contractual language and some of that work. So that was what the effort was on our part, was to bring them on that way.
Okay, a couple more and I'll finish up, I promise. I know that how your system works, and I know that you start with all of your critical, your hospitals, schools, fire, police. I know you get all of those first, nursing homes and whatnot, and then you start some of your biggest substations that supply the most customers. But there are some folks in District 1 and a lot of other District 35 and other areas that are really rural that maybe only 6 people on their street. And because there's only 6 people on their street, they're gonna be dead last. Can you not put together a couple of crews to go around and work specifically on just those areas so that they don't have to work last?
We will be looking at how we scale up to be able to do more of that. The focus in any storm is always to get the most done at the same time as efficient as possible. We're going to model, now that we have gone through this storm, we're going to begin to model storms. And I think the question was asked, how much faster could it have been done? If we put a model together for the most efficient and effective way to get done, we will have to at some point make some choices of hard choices along the way. But I think scaling up to even more resources is a great question, and possibly having some resources for the smaller circuits, making sure though that it does not distract from a larger restoration as well.
So my next one is on critical need folks and like the folks that need dialysis and other life-saving stuff, and they're in your system of being a priority customer, but say they're in an area that the substation that supplies their area has got a 50 MVA transformer that's blown up. You don't have one. You're trucking one here from Texas. It may not be here in a couple days. That you can go ahead and just go to that person. Make sure that you get them somewhere else. Make sure that you get them a generator. Work with OEM to make sure they have everything they need and make them a 100% priority.
And absolutely, and that is part of that critical referral customer program. It mentions that we will work with OEM in any situation where you have widespread outages and can't get them restored quickly. That's where our partnership with OEM is already underway. But to enhance that is something that we're talking about through the storm, what we have learned. We'll be working to enhance that and make sure we're reaching out more quickly.
And last but not least, there are a lot of customers out there that power came back to their neighborhood. The weather heads were damaged, the meter box was damaged. They already paid their rent or a car note, and a lot of folks live paycheck to paycheck, and they didn't have the money to hire an electrician to come do that. And so they were out with power 10 days or 2 weeks waiting to find somebody to loan them money. Is there not some sort of program that in an emergency situation like this, that you can pay or work out something to pay the electrician, put that on their bill and let them pay that off in a 12 to 18 month period? No, Piedmont does that with folks that are on fixed incomes and things like that. Is there not something you could do to help the folks out? So just because they don't have the money, they shouldn't have to do without power.
So another question was asked earlier, and we were looking at that program that possibly helps with weatherheads and service lines. The details of that are still being worked out. We were just before this storm getting some of that. We'll work that. I think it's a great suggestion to consider and figure out what that could look like for customers and be able to respond better. So I think the interest that you all have shown tonight and being able to work together and provide feedback, every one of the comments has been helpful. We are also public utility employees, all of us, and we are public utility employees because we believe in serving the community. This interest together, these are great suggestions. I think we'll take all of them into account and figure out how to make sure we.
Last two little just a comment, really. I'm going to ask if you all would work with the mayor's office and make sure that every single person on the electric board is utility qualified and not somebody else who's just good and somebody who understands how to hire people, but people that understand the utility industry, how it works, its uniqueness, and how it works together.
We will certainly work with the mayor's office as people are nominated for our board. We have a variety of skills that we need at times on our board. For example, a couple of years ago, we had a very large IT project underway. We really needed an IT expert. They didn't necessarily need any utility experience to help us with that. We just needed someone that had IT experience and was a leader in the IT industry. So we certainly work with the mayor's office on what we need, and the most recent nomination that was put forth and confirmed has utility experience and has been an excellent board member.
And my last comment, someone who's been in the utility industry, I know that there's absolutely no way that you can make any system 100% reliable. It's a money issue. There's not enough money to make every single solitary system 100% reliable of every possible event, whether it's NDOT or snow and water and everything else. So I personally, from me, who's been in the utility industry for 40 years, I want to thank you for what you did.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Nash. And after this, we do have two council members that have two quick last questions. Councilmember Allen, just so everybody knows, submitted questions because she couldn't be here, but we will make sure to get those to Councilmember Weiner so they can just be added to the list, so we're mindful of the time. So, Councilmember Nash.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. If I heard correctly, if you were one of the critical case list, if you're somebody on that list, but you're in the middle of a circuit that still has to be repaired, there's really not a way to go out to the house and turn their power on. Is that correct?
That is correct. And that's our partnership with OEM to make sure to identify those locations.
And I guess I spent 32 years at the police department as commander of East Precinct at the end of it, and I always choked a little bit when I would tell somebody or somebody would ask for extra patrol. Because at the end of the day, it was going to be really kind of disingenuous and give people a false sense of security. Instead of maybe an officer driving by once, they might drive by 3 times. And if they spent 2 minutes, that was 6 minutes out of the day, 24 hours. They really weren't getting a lot of protection that they might feel like they were getting. And I think what we set ourselves up for is another failure. We're telling people, oh, yeah, you're on the list. I had a neighbor that came and spent a couple of nights with us. She was on the list. He brought her CPAP with her. So and now we're adding all kinds of folks with disabilities and the like. I don't know that we can do that at the time of the emergency. I really think we need to start, if you have a CPAP machine, I told my neighbor, I said, maybe you need to think about it, Generac, for those long times when power's going to go out and may very well happen again. I hope it doesn't, in my lifetime anyway. We had it in 94, 35 years ago, or 30 years ago. And this was 3 times as bad as the storm in 1994 that we lived through. So I think that is an issue for council also. Maybe we need to find a way to talk to these people now and say, all right, if we have an emergency of 5 days out of power, how can we power you up? Get you ready, whether it be a Generac or just a plain old generator if you're able to use it, and have those things inside. And maybe we can help subsidize some of that for folks in lower incomes, because I know some folks can't afford it. But to wait until the storm hits and the roads are icy and expect you're going to get the kind of service that you need and want immediately is not going to happen. So we've got to find a way to get ahead of that game if we're going to really be serious about helping all the people with the critical needs and disabilities. I think council might want to talk about, and I don't know if we need to acquire the state, but we had nursing homes that had no power. There should be at least a minimum amount of power to warm up, to power up people with the special needs, and a couple of warming rooms within any of those facilities to make sure people can stay warm and live through the storm. Again, that can't be done the day of the storm. We need to start maybe requiring people to do. The hospitals have their generators. We have generators at the East Precinct to power things up when we have these long storms. And that's the answer. I think otherwise we're just kind of whistling past the graveyard and just, we got to get ahead of this. And the way to do it, I think, is to start subsidizing and making sure we get in touch with these people now. And hopefully we won't ever have to use it, but we've got to get something in place before the storm hits.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you.
Councilmember Parker, you're recognized.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a brief one for NDOT. So I think we did a phenomenal job this season with the pre-treatment and the snow removal and all that. One thing I did notice with the kind of severity of the ice accumulation and specifically a couple of pedestrian bridges in East Nashville, the one that connects my neighborhood to transit and groceries and schools is the Ellington pedestrian bridge. That thing was treacherous. That one day that we had some sun come out and kind of warm everything up and melt it, didn't do anything for that bridge. People were clutching to the chain link to take each step. I know that the main pedestrian bridge across the Cumberland was also pretty gnarly well after the storm. And so, we've got INDOT here. I know Parks isn't here. And an interesting thing about the pedestrian bridges is they're kind of mixed assets. So some of them are Parks, some of them are INDOT. Once you cross the pedestrian bridge, it goes from INDOT to Parks. And I wonder if we can try to identify a network of what are the kind of, I'm not saying that we need to salt all of Shelby Bottoms, but the critical pieces of Parks and INDOT infrastructure that, don't accommodate vehicle traffic, which is how we're salting things most of the time, but can we, if not for this storm cycle, for next winter, can we look at treating the pedestrian bridges, have some kind of collaboration between Parks and INDOT to identify which ones are critical parts of our transportation infrastructure, and make sure that we're doing some level of treatment for those as well.
Thank you, sir. And you're exactly right. And we have identified those. And I want to say we have them identified. We've had a pilot program out that we've been working on this year that I kind of done a presentation at the first of the season about. But yes, we have identified that. And that's where we've got to do better.
Excellent, thank you, sir. And for the Ellington pedestrian bridge, if y'all would like to park a spreader in the alley behind my house with some ice melt, I'm happy to handle labor on that one for the next storm. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, he's gonna bring his chainsaw too when that tree falls and make sure you can get to it.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Toombs, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chairs. My question is actually for Metro Legal. And it's based off some conversations recently around the relationship between Metro and NES. And I'll say that in my experience as a council member, it's always been my understanding that NES was a quasi-governmental entity, that they do their own thing, own budget. Yeah, we confirm board members, but they pretty much operate separately from Metro. And I know some new legal research, recent legal research has, I guess, shined some light on that relationship. So if Metro Legal can talk a little bit of what type of oversight the council has over NES, or what's that relationship like? Is that? Or our council, whatever attorney over there wants to speak to it.
Thank you, Chair. Council member, from my research of this issue, the Electric Power Board does business as NES, and that the Power Board has been an administrative agency of the metropolitan government since before the metropolitan government existed. It was part of the city of Nashville, and that authority was transferred over from the city of Nashville to the metropolitan government when the consolidation occurred. In terms of oversight, I'm happy to speak with Metro Legal about this, but it is, based on my consideration, based on my conversations with the Department of Law, council oversight over NES would be through the Electric Power Board, through possible removal of members of that board. And, Mr. Rosenberg may also have more to say if that's acceptable.
Thank you. Yes, all of that. The 1947, I think, private act that's incorporated as an appendix to the charter talks about the electric board, our role in appointing confirming members to that board. Otherwise, besides bond issuances, largely prohibits, explicitly prohibits involvement in the management and operations of the Electric Power Board. I think that we've exhausted my knowledge of it.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Chair. So just to recap, okay, so the Public Utility Board that's discussed in the state law is NES, correct? Mr. Wilson? Just recapping.
For purposes of your question, yes.
Okay.
The Electric Power Board under state law does businesses NES.
And we don't have, as a council, we don't have any authority over, or Metro, any authority over the management of NES. However, as we all know, the mayor appoints board members, the council confirms those board members, and the council has the authority to remove board members.
That's correct.
And that's the full extent of our authority over NES.
That's correct, Councilor.
All right, thank you.
To add to that, I would love if whether it's Metro Legal or the council office could provide that authority, because I've reviewed our charter, which is different from the general state law, and I think that they say different things. So I'm just curious on the removal provision, what we are actually relying on, because I don't think that is in the charter.
Yes, I'm happy to get that citation for you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hill had one more question.
This one's for NES. Can we all come to the table and start really talking seriously about underground utilities? I know it's a 20 to 30 year program, may even be longer, but we've got to start somewhere. We've got to start putting things underground. It's proved in many other cities that it's better. I don't know if you read my op-ed in the Tennessean, but it's something that we need. We've got to move forward with this.
Over the last few years, we have been looking at doing strategic undergrounding, where we see a need to underground infrastructure that may be critical to feeder lines, things of that nature. We want to do an undergrounding study. I think this is just this form is just a reminder that while we've looked at undergrounding in the past and have considered it to be prohibitive, like many years ago, considered it to be prohibitively expensive, I personally have always liked the idea of undergrounding, and that's why we started looking at strategic undergrounding opportunities. So we plan to do an undergrounding study for the city to figure out where that might make sense for us.
All right, thank you, Councilmember. Anything further? Okay. Chair Huffman, what questions do you have, sir?
The beauty of going last is a lot of my questions got answered. So I have one very direct question for NES. One thing that district level council members suffered from during this storm was the inability to contact our constituents who didn't have power. I know myself, I made several attempts at obtaining that list, and I never got it. So my question for you is, moving forward, can you commit in the event that we do have a massive power outage again? We can talk about the stipulations, whether it's after 2 days or after 3 days or whatever, but we've got to have a list to reach out to our vulnerable populations. And that's as much as us helping you as it is anything. There were a lot of folks in our areas, mine is no different, that Councilmember Nash, you could, Councilmember Nash. Thank you. There was a lot of instances where people were put in very bad situations. Could have been deadly situations. This could have been a lot worse. And if we have the ability to check in on people, now I'm not saying everybody will do it, but if we have that ability to do that, if we have that list, we can then have our local police precinct start doing welfare checks, for example. But that wasn't done this time. And that can't happen again. We've got to be able to contact folks that don't have power. That would be my one ask coming out of this, and that'll be something that our small work group that we'll talk more about in our public health and safety meeting on Tuesday will be exploring.
I know that so many of the council people have worked hard to be in touch with their constituents. I was not aware that you had requested data on your constituents that we did not provide. Was it specific to critical referral customers or just all customers in your district without power?
It was all customers without power.
Okay. I would think that is something we could provide. We will look into that and be sure that we are able to provide you with the information you need. And of course, it would be a point in time, because as we're continuing to restore power, that list would change. If we could find a digital tool to provide you with that so you could look at your district, that would be ideal. We could look into that. I'm not sure where we would start on that. We did a lot of quick technology work, just trying to get the maps that we put together available to customers. So we may be able to piggyback on some of the work that's recently been done.
So I appreciate that answer. With all due respect, a static map that I have to zoom in on to see dots that are power outages that were reported a week ago is not helpful. So now an interactive map moving forward would be very helpful. So as you are exploring options, that would be amazing. Just to be able to have that ability to say, okay, I have one neighborhood that's out, I need to contact all of these people. Or, oh, I've got a one-off right here that I need to advocate for because I know that they have dialysis that they're doing in-home. So it's just things like that we have our ear to the ground on our level that we can be very helpful with, and some of the more costly situations can be avoided.
I agree. And I think there are definitely some tools we can explore. We put together a lot of things in a very short period of time due to the magnitude of this storm. I think things can be refined and improved, but I don't see why we wouldn't be able to provide you with a list.
Thank you.
All right. I had 3 questions, but one was for the water department, and unfortunately they had a conflict and had to step out. But just for everybody's visibility, there are 2 types of sewer systems in this county. There are gravity systems and there are pump systems. And those of you, particularly in parts of the county that were not on our original sewer system, where we in our sewer department service that sewer, but it's not really our system. So a good example is Bellmead Sewer is a separate sewer. There was a lot of confusion during this ice storm about whether you should drip your pipes or not. And so one thing I'm going to ask the water department is if they can just sort of generally identify where in the county people are on pump-fed sewer, because if those people are dripping their pipe and they're out of power for a week, then their sewer is not going anywhere. And so there was a lot about sewage backups potentially happening. And my understanding from talking to the water department is that's where that comes from. That's not our system. Our system in Nashville is gravity fed, so most Nashvilleians don't have that. But if you're on sort of one of these other systems that we serve, that can be an issue when the power goes out. NES is still there, so I have one question for NES, which I think should be very short, which is, I heard, well, I guess 2 really short questions. One is, I've heard over and over, people don't get charged when they don't use power, but a lot of people experience brownouts. And so their home was not habitable because they couldn't, like, turn on their stove or run their heat, but their lights might have been coming on because a little bit of power was dripping in. And I'm assuming that does run the meter. And is that accurate? Are people, if, say, they've left their home because they don't have enough power to run it to live in it, but the lights are on because they didn't know they, were gonna be on when they left their house, and just the lights are running. Are they gonna get a bill for the power used for that sort of service that is less than habitable service?
When you have a situation that's a brownout, as you've described, the meter is running. And from our system control, we can't see that they don't have full power. So those are definitely circumstances customers need to make us aware of.
Okay, so they should just reach out to you if they have any concerns about that.
Indeed.
Okay, thank you. And then just, I also heard from a lot of people that their power would come back on, and they were very excited. I mean, people literally were like running out in the streets cheering with their neighbors when their power would come back on. And then like 4 hours later, it would go out. But it'd be for just a couple hours, and then it would come back on. And this was typically because their power had to be cut to restore power to somebody else temporarily. But they weren't getting notifications of that. And so then there was a lot of concern that, oh no, what if my power really is back out and I don't know it? And do I need to report this outage, or do they know about it? When is it coming back on? Are we working on communication systems that can alert people of those sort of planned or necessary outages so that they understand that they're not going to be ongoing outages?
There certainly are a lot of circumstances where we have had to cut power again so that we can repair something. And that will continue for the next couple of weeks while we fix things that were originally temporary repairs. There are some that a crew will go out, they'll put a temporary fix in, and then we'll go back out with all the equipment that we need to repair some of those. We also have street lights and other things where the poles need to be set and the lights installed. There's a lot of work we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks. We intended, the original purpose of the texting system that we had in place was so that customers would get a notification saying, hey, we know you're out of power. And then they would get notified when their power is restored. The system has been turned off just because of the issues we've discussed earlier in this meeting. Customers getting notified their power was restored when it was not, because their circuit was restored, but their circuit was bifurcated to get a large group of people back on. We're looking at ways to refine the texting system to ensure that customers do get those communications to say, yes, we know your power is out, and then they don't feel the need to report it.
Okay, thank you. And sorry, real quick, it's not a question, just Councilmember Johnson had to leave early, but she did request that if NES is willing to provide an org chart, that she would find that helpful. And then my last question is for OEM, and I think this should be a fairly quick question. I was really lucky, I kept power, but I lost internet, and I am on Verizon, and as anybody with Verizon knows, Verizon also went down for this. So there were days where it was very difficult in my home to make a phone call, to get on the internet. Obviously, we weren't watching press conferences, any of that sort of thing that required any sort of streaming capability was not happening in our home. And so we were very disconnected. In hurricanes, you know, when the whole grid goes down, they can bring in trucks that are sort of like temporary cell service. I know we don't control Verizon itself, but were any conversations had with cell phone carriers? Is there anything we can do as a city to sort of help with that coverage issue? Because in a world where nobody has landlines and nobody has antenna TV, if your cell phone is down and your internet is down, whether that's because your power is out or not, you have no idea what is going on.
Yes, yeah, that's an excellent question. Working with our NDOT and also with NES, we realized there were a lot of poles that went down were providers that actually had poles, like AT&T, and there's a couple others that actually have poles. Yesterday, we met with AT&T partners so that as the restoration of power take place, identifying that there were actually poles that belonged to AT&T, so they could get put into this coordination of getting power or getting those back restored. So that's the ongoing process that we're looking at, because again, as we ran into this very situation, we wanted to make sure when we bring people to the ELC, we got to make sure who all do we need in there, and we realized quickly as the restoration started taking place that, you know, there were other poles that had identifiers as phone services. So that's one of the things that we're working with again. So I'll be more than happy to provide a better list that for Metro Council moving forward, because that was new for us as well. But as we encounter those situations, we make sure that we captivate and make everybody, bring everybody to the table, and make sure we have clear understanding of what processes do you have in place that's going to prohibit us from being able to communicate? So I appreciate that question.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. And, you know, God forbid somebody needs to call 911 and everything is down, and then what does one do? So,
Absolutely.
thank you. All right. I think a lot of questions have been asked. I don't have any particular closing comments to add to the discussion other than I expect that both of our committees going forward will have a lot of processes to talk through with departments and work to do. I look forward to seeing what NES's after action audit says and what the mayor's commission is able to recommend as well. I know that we looked at underground power lines 20 years ago now, and it did not make it very far, but I think sort of looking at what it has cost us over that past 20 years, from floods to bombs to tornadoes to this ice event, that calculus may be different. Councilmember Huffman? No, all right. With that, we are adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.